Good morning and welcome to the June 14th, 2017 Board of County Commissioners meeting. I'm Kate Flavin, Public Information Officer for Sedgwick County. As this is our last meeting of the month, our last regular meeting of the month, I would like to bring up a few folks to talk about fireworks safety so we can all enjoy a safe 4th of July holiday.
Good morning, Commissioners. Laura Forsham, I'm your Director of Emergency Communications. As we are rolling through the summer and 4th of July will be upon us quickly, I want to remind everybody that we will be staffing our non-emergency line for fireworks nuisance complaints this year. If you remember, we do this line every 4th of July in an effort to take those calls off of the emergency system so that the 911 lines are open for medical emergencies, fires, crimes that are in progress, things such as that. And these nuisance lines, while still hired by still handled by 911 staff and by public safety first responders, are actually on to another line so that they can be handled in a different manner. We are going to staff this non-emergency line on July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, starting at 6:30 p.m. each night and going until 3 a.m. the following morning. So, for example, 6:30 p.m. on July 1st to 3 a.m. on July 2nd, picking up again at 6:30 p.m. on July 2nd. We will have additional personnel on hand to handle not only those fireworks nuisance complaints, but the other calls that we get coming in. It's generally a very exciting weekend in dispatch. We have a lot of celebrators in the community, and we all know that alcohol-infused events can sometimes get out of hand. So we are on hand, on staff to be ready to handle those and any things that happen. We encourage the citizens of Sedgwick County to help us and be responsible partners in this public safety system and only utilize the 911 lines for true emergencies. Those fireworks nuisance complaints, while valid, and we will handle those too, need to go on to the 290-1011 line, which is our non-emergency line. Calling into 911, we will push those calls off into that non-emergency queue to keep those lines open for true emergencies. So we really ask for a community partnership from everybody to make sure that the 911 system is handled responsibly 365 days a year, but especially during these times where we know where we're going to have a higher call volume. So again, that number 290-1011, 290-1011, and that'll be July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And we will, of course, be working with our media partners to put that out so that citizens are well aware of that line and that they have that information so that they can have a happy and healthy holiday. I'm going to turn it over to the County Fire Department. They can talk about fireworks safety. Go ahead.
Well, I know that this is, seems like perhaps it's too early for the 4th of July to be reminding folks, but this is our last opportunity to do that. Are you going to figure out a way to put out a reminder closer to the 4th, either the newspaper or website? Or?
Absolutely. That's where we're so thankful to have good media partnerships so that we can put out that information closer to the 4th of July. They do a good job of promoting that within their broadcasts and their publications so that people have that right on hand during those holidays.
Okay, very good.
So,
appreciate
absolutely.
that.
Any other questions before I turn it over to the County Fire Department?
I don't see any. So.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Robert Timmons. I'm a Division Chief with Sedgwick County Fire District 1. Just to kind of set the parameters on how powerful fireworks really are, I have a few little facts. Water boils at 212 degrees. Cakes we bake in the oven at 350. Wood burns at 575 degrees. Glass melts at 900 degrees. A sparkler burns at 1200 degrees. And a lot of us, the first thing we do when we're having fun at celebrations is we light a sparkler and hand it to the kids. Sparkler injuries account for more than 25% of the emergency room visits due to fireworks injuries. And there will be approximately 18,500 reported fires over the 4th of July nationwide. And that's only the ones that get reported. A lot of them, the vegetation fires and whatnot, will be extinguished by someone with a garden hose or a bucket of water or whatnot. So with these thoughts in mind and the strain that these kind of holidays put on the emergency services all the way around, we do advise people to keep buckets of water handy. If there's an unexploded ordnance, stay away from it for about 30 minutes. Do not look over one to see why it didn't go off. We've already had one very severe life-altering injury in Sedgwick County this year over Memorial Weekend from a fireworks accident. And that's one too many. So We just need to be very careful. If you're not comfortable with shooting off your own fireworks, please visit one of the public displays that are going on and enjoy them from a distance. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions, but appreciate that announcement and reminder. Those facts about the varying temperature degrees of temperatures that we're used to, it's pretty dramatic to think that a sparkler is, 1,200 degrees. I have lit a lot of sparklers in my life, never knew what I was playing with. So appreciate your encouragement to be safe and to be smart. So thank you.
All right. Thank you.
That's all we have this morning, Commissioners, so I will let you get started with the meeting.
All right. Thank you, Kate. Appreciate everyone that's here this morning and hope that those watching will all take heed to the reminders that were given to us this morning about use of our emergency line and about safe use of fireworks. So appreciate everybody that's here in the meeting with us today, and at this time I will call to order the regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, June 14th, 2017. Madam Clerk, first item.
Invocation to be led by Reverend Randy Quinn, West Heights United Methodist Church. Please remain standing for the flag salute.
Let us pray. God in heaven, we thank you today. We thank you for the promise that you are here. We pray today that you will be with those who are affected by the shootings in Washington, D.C. this morning. Today we ask you to guide us here, to guide those whom we have elected to lead us, to guide those who will be appointed to serve as appraiser and in other committees and agencies. Even though we ask them to serve us, today we ask you to speak to them in the silence of their hearts so they may respond to your will more than ours. As agenda items are brought before this body, bring to our minds the faces of particular people who are affected by the decisions being made today, so that we don't think of generic children, but rather remember that one child we saw playing in the playground. That we not think of all the residents of our community as if they are faceless, but remembering the woman we witnessed planting flowers, or the man sharing his umbrella. Remind us that today the work we do is holy work, because it is your work, the work of administering and caring for our community, our neighbors, our children. Bless the work of your servants today, O God. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor, thank you for being with us this morning. Appreciate it. I will ask the clerk to call the roll, but I would want to say that Commissioner Dennis will be here in just a few minutes. He's been at a Forensic McConnell meeting at Botanica this morning representing the county, so he'll be here shortly. But with that, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Dennis, Commissioner Ranza,
Present.
Commissioner Howell,
Present.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Present.
Chairman Unruh.
Present. Next item.
Public agenda.
Commissioners, I haven't had anyone sign up to speak on the public agenda this morning, so we will move on to the next item.
Consideration of minutes. Item A, regular meeting minutes of May 10th, 2017.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept the minutes for May 10th, 2017.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Call the vote, please.
Commissioner Dennis, Commissioner Ranza,
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
Chairman Unruh.
Aye. And next item?
Item B, regular meeting minutes of May 17th, 2017.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the meeting minutes from May 17th, 2017.
Second. Thank you. Madam Clerk, call vote.
Commissioner Ranza,
Aye.
Commissioner Howell,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell,
Aye.
Chairman Unruh.
Aye. And next item, please.
Appointments. Item C, resolution reappointing Michael Borchard as the Sedgwick County Appraiser.
Mr. Chairman, Eric Yost, County Councilor. Item C is a resolution reappointing Mr. Michael S. Borchard as Sedgwick County Appraiser. Mr. Borchard has been serving as appraiser for 12 years, and his current term expires at the end of this month. The statutes set out various requirements to hold this office, and Mr. Borchard meets all those qualifications. His new term, if he were to be appointed, would expire June 30, 2021, and I would urge adoption of the resolution.
All right, thank you, Mr. Counselor. I will make the motion that we adopt the resolution.
I'll second.
Thank you. Commissioners have an opportunity for comment or discussion. I would just open the comments by saying I think Mr. Borchard's been a faithful servant of citizens of Sedgwick County now through 2 appointments, I believe, for several years, and he's in a job that is it's a tough job. It's not an enviable position to be in. No one likes paying taxes. Everybody thinks their appraisal's too high, and so it's gets a lot of resistance, I guess you'd say, to his work and all his staff. But I believe that we're in compliance with state requirements as we oversee this function of our county appraiser, and I'm pleased to say that I think Michael's doing a good job. So I'm pleased to support this reappointment. Are there any other comments? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just appreciate Mr. Borchard's ability to work with people, and whenever I've had citizens that had issues with their home appraisals, he and his staff have been diligent in addressing that. And then I also know that the commercial side isn't as much fun, but I appreciate his willingness to work and try to help the citizens of Sedgwick County.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this particular reappointment? His office touches everybody in Sedgwick County in one way or another. So if there's someone who wants to make a comment, we're ready to hear it. I don't see anyone indicating a desire to speak, so if there's no further discussion, Madam Clerk, will you call a vote, please?
Commissioner Ranzau?
No.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Chairman Unruh?
Aye. Mr. Borchard, did you want to make a statement?
I just want to thank the Commission for their support. Thank the County Manager and his folks for their support too, as well as all the staff in the Appraiser's Office for their support. And we're going to continue to work on our mission to provide quality public service and provide an accurate appraisal roll annually used in the formulation of property tax. So,
well, we want you to know that we appreciate your efforts and the efforts of all your staff. I don't remember how many folks you have that are involved in this service to the community. How many folks do you have?
There are 65 in our office. 65
people. Well, we appreciate your work, and we want you to carry forward and keep us in compliance with the laws. And if you can make my appraisal lower, well, that's okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, I think we're ready for the next item, please.
Item D, resolution nominating the following individuals for appointments and reappointments to the Wichita City Council as members of the Wichita Airport Advisory Board.
Mr. Chairman, Eric Yost again, County Councilor. Item D is the resolution related to the Board of County Commissioners nominations for the Wichita Airport Advisory Board. Currently, the County Commission has 5 members who are nominated by you all and then voted upon and appointed by the city. This resolution would nominate 2 individuals who are currently serving and then 2 individuals who would replace others. The Commissioner Unruh is recommending that Ron Ryan be renominated by the Board of County Commissioners and then reappointed by the city. Commissioner Howell is recommending that David Esslinger be renominated by this board and then reappointed by the city. Commissioner Dennis is recommending that Tim Bonnell be nominated by the Board of County Commissioners and appointed by the city. He would replace Mr. Rich Kirshen. And Commissioner O'Donnell is recommending that John Hennessy Jr. be nominated by this board and appointed by the city. He would replace Dr. Tom Rosenberg. The fifth person serving on the Airport Advisory Board is Commissioner Ranzau's recommendation, Mr. Rob Benton, who has already been appointed a year ago and whose term expires June 30 of 2018. And I think the paperwork's all in order. Mr. Chairman, I urge adoption of the resolution.
All right, thank you. What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move the adoption of the resolution.
Thank you.
Second.
And we have a second. Is there any discussion? Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know all of these folks. I do know a couple of them, and I just want to make a quick comment on David Esslinger. That is, I used to work with him for a very long time. He is in the audience. I just want to just commend him for his service. Like myself, he's addicted to airplanes. He loves everything about aircraft and airports, and so he's a tremendous appointment to this, a good member of our community, and I just really appreciate his service. And I'm sure the other ones are wonderful people as well. I do at least know one of the other people being appointed here. I have great respect for him as well, but I just want to say about Dave how great of a guy he is and how much I appreciate him specifically. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there any other comment? Before we call the vote, I'd want the clerk to note that Commissioner Dennis has arrived at the meeting from his representation with Friends of McConnell. So.
Thank you.
Is there any other comment? Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Dennis?
Abstain.
Commissioner Ranzau?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Chairman Unruh.
Aye. Next item, please.
New business. Item E. Contract for Household Hazardous Waste Remote Collection event on June 17, 2017.
Good morning, Commissioners. Susan Erlewine with Environmental Resources. A lot of us have unwanted chemicals around our house, whether it's used oil, gasoline mixed with water, or that chemical that we bought that we thought would be so great to clean everything in the house that just didn't work and is shoved at the back of the cabinet under the kitchen sink. We can help people get rid of those unwanted chemicals. They can take them for free to our Household Hazardous Waste facility at 801 Stillwell. It's open Tuesday through Friday, 9 to 5, and Saturdays, 9 to 3. But in order to better help our community, we also have remote household hazardous waste collection events. We have one this Saturday, June 17th, and it's located at the K-MART store at 47th Street South and Broadway. That's on the southeast corner of that intersection, and it will be at the parking lot just north of the building. The remote would be from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., and we encourage any Sedgwick County citizen in the area to come to that facility and drop off unwanted chemicals. Before you, you have a contract signed by Jeff Lang representing the K-MART store, and I'd recommend your approval and ask the chairman to sign. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Susan. Commissioners, are there any questions? I think we're all familiar with this and the reason for it and the success of it. So, yeah. What's the will of the board?
Mr. Chair, I'm very excited about the event this Saturday, and I move that we approve the contract.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye, and I have a question. I didn't know which item you were on last time. I have no problem with item D, and I'd like to change my vote to aye on that. Is that correct?
If that's legal, we will certainly.
Why, sure it is.
All right. Then we're all in agreement, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, where were we, Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Ranzau?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Chairman Unruh.
Aye. And next item, please.
Item F, contract for a household hazardous waste remote collection event on June 24th, 2017.
Again, for the record, Susan Erlewine with Environmental Resources. I'm not going to repeat everything I just said on the past one, except that we have an event a week from this Saturday on June 24th. It will be located at the Derby North Middle School. That's 3100 North Rock Road in Derby. It's on the east side of Rock, easy access in and out of the school. So we're looking forward to people going to that event as well. It's, again, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on June 24th. And the USD 260 has signed the contract that's before you. I'd recommend your approval and ask the chairman to sign. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We have a comment from Commissioner Howell.
Commissioner, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to say, like Commissioner O'Donnell, I'm very excited to have this in the community in my district. This is a new location. Derby has built a beautiful brand new middle school on the north end of Derby, and it's going to be very accessible to people in South Wichita, people who may have connection to the military base, McConnell Air Force Base. It's a great location, and it's a great facility there. So I'm excited about using that, and to have this in my community, I'm just really excited. And again, that's 10 days from today. I think today's the 14th, so 10 days out. So people can start planning ahead. I hope that people will show up, and I just want to make a little bit of a plea again. I'm still looking for, I think, 6 volunteers. If anybody wants to help with this event, it's a great opportunity to do this. And what are the hours again of the event?
9 a.m. to 1 p.m.
9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So if anybody wants to be a volunteer for that, let me know. I should like to talk with you. That's great. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this contract.
Thank you. And we have a second from Commissioner Ranzau. All right. Is there any discussion? Please call the vote.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzau?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Chairman Unruh.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Next item, please.
Item G, Center City South Tax Increment Finance District, amendment to the district plan.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Brent Shelton with Sedgwick County Department of Finance. The item before you this morning is a request from the City of Wichita for your consideration for an amendment to the district plan for the Center City South Tax Increment Finance District. On May 16th, the City of Wichita voted to adopt an amendment to the plan that basically started a 30-day clock within which the city, or the county, and the school district have the right to weigh in on the plan and affect the change to that plan. You have 3 options before you today. As with any TIF district proposal, you may vote by simple majority to approve this amendment, you may vote to deny it, or you may also take no action, which would allow the amendment to the district plan to take effect. As we get into why this is before you today, it's an amendment to the district plan. It's not a project plan that would be a specific improvement. This would allow a change to the overall plan that is part of the initial approval of a TIF district. So let me give you a little bit of history about this TIF district and then what you're going to be looking at this morning. First of all, this TIF district was approved in 2007. See if we can get the technology working this morning. Basically, the area that you see described here was the original TIF district. It's the Center City South Exchange Place TIF. You can see Century 2 over here, the Interest Bank Arena, and this TIF district, like I said, was established in 2007. In 2008, the City Council asked that the boundaries of this TIF district be expanded. The expansion of that included the area here in the red, which moved over around the Interest Bank Arena further to the south. Now, at the time that they brought this to you, this is one of the 3 things for which the county or the school district has the ability to affect a change or a creation of the TIF district. One is the actual creation. Second is a material change to the boundaries, which is what this was. And the third is a change to the district plan, which is the overarching agreement that describes what the TIF district is for. At the time, in December of 2008, that the expansion was approved by the Board of County Commissioners, you had a couple of caveats or conditions to that approval. One was that the scope of improvements that were TIF funds could be used for was narrowed to basically street improvements, streetscapes, that sort of thing. Also, parking as well, and you put a limit on the amount of money for parking at $10 million. And the other thing was that a share of the incremental revenues that would come from the increase in assessed value in the TIF area 30% of that revenue would go back to the districts that contributed, the City of Wichita, Sedgwick County, and USD 259. Typically, all of the incremental revenue goes to the TIF district. In this area, they get 70%, and 30% then comes back to the districts. So as you're looking at this, there are some things that we need to consider as whether or not this change would have adverse effect on the county. Now, what the city is proposing is that the uses of TIF eligible funds would be expanded to include expenditures to drastically change the NAFSCR Park area. NAFSCR Park is a park that is just north of the Intrust Bank Arena, and what the city is proposing is that it would change from its current use to an urban park that's designed to maximize that space. It'd be a more open space designed for events and different things that could be used in conjunction with events in Union Station, which is on the other side of the railroad. It could be used with events at the Intrust Bank Arena. So it's more of an open urban concept plan rather than what the park is designed for today. The impetus for this, one of them is that the NCAA basketball tournament will have some games here in March of 2018. This would put a better face on the Intrust Bank Arena if the park is cleaned up, if you will, and changed into more of an events-based venue. I'm told that the NAFSCR family, who is the family that initially contributed money for the park, is in support of the proposed improvements to the park. And these expenditures are legally, statutorily TIF eligible expenditures. It's just that they were excluded from the limited scope that was made in the district plan when the TIF was expanded in 2008. A couple of things to note is that the next steps in this will be a new project plan would need to be filed. That would outline the specific improvements, give more focus to the money. That has to be approved by a 2/3 majority of the City Council. And this does not change the amount of money that the county contributes to this TIF district going forward. Whatever money we would contribute next year, this is going to be the same. We're just allowing the city to reallocate resources that we're already going to be contributing to this tax increment finance district. Now, since this is an item that is one of the three that's identified as something that you have the ability to affect, we go through an adverse effect analysis to see would this change create an adverse effect on the county. Now remember, we have 5 items that we look at, and because of the fact that the amount of money next year and in subsequent years wouldn't change, we're not really able to determine much, if any, adverse effect on the county. But let's walk briefly through the 5 items just so you see how we got to that analysis. The first one is dealing with the potential loss of tax revenue and whether that hinders our effective future delivery of services. As I've mentioned, our contribution is going to be the same. In 2016, the county's levy that goes into this TIF district was $68,000. If that goes up to $70 next year, it'll go up to $70, whether you approve or deny this change today. If these park improvements do increase value or activity in the area, the county will share in 30% of that additional revenue. If it goes the other way, then of course then your contribution would go down. So I'm not seeing anything that would indicate that the county's contribution is going to go up or down, and if it does, our revenues from this area will go up or down accordingly. The second thing is whether or not this project is economically feasible without county support. I'm told by economic development folks from the city that are projecting about $1.5 million project in the park that they do not have money currently budgeted to make these expenditures in the park, that if they went forward with anything, it would be a much smaller version of this, and that they probably wouldn't proceed at this point in time. The third thing is that deals with private equity funding. Since this is just a reallocation of public money, we're not looking to a developer and whether or not they have skin in the game. The fourth one talks about costs to county government being greater than benefits to county government. Again, the only time that we could find costs or potential costs to the county if this reallocation results in something 20, 22, 24 years down the road, extending out the life of the TIF district. But in this area, they have identified 12 different potential project areas. So I don't see no immediate impact to this going forward at this time. And the fifth one deals with whether or not we were given sufficient data or notification from the city. We've known about this for some time. We've been provided with information and answers to questions as they have come up. So to summarize, in the short term, I'm not seeing any adverse effect to going forward with this amendment to the district plan. It will not affect our bottom line for the foreseeable future. And with that, I will stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Brent. Commissioners, are there any question or comment? Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, like the TIF question we had a couple weeks ago, I spent a fair amount of time on this one and trying to analyze it. I appreciate the presentation this morning. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I think those 5 questions are pretty much the key to what we should do on these types of questions, and I appreciate you analyzing that and helping us understand those impacts. A couple of questions I have. So let me understand that the 70% of the growth in the base for the park is what we're talking about. That's the $615,000 over the 20 years. Is that right? To the county, the county's portion is $615,000, which is the growth in the base. It's related to the park itself.
Right. That would be our contribution over a 20-year lifespan at the maximum development that they're looking at this point. So we would contribute. That's what that number is. It's part of the incremental growth that we don't receive back.
And right now, in terms of what's already been approved prior to today, this is already a TIF district, and the money's already been essentially allowed to flow for purposes of the TIF. But what we're talking about today is changing the purpose slightly to allow them to do some renovation inside the park versus streets and lighting and landscape as was previously approved. Is that correct?
Exactly.
Okay. First of all, let me just say I can't say the name NAPSGR very well because there's 4 syllables. I'm sorry, 4 consonants back to back without any vowels between. So that's a tough one for me. But overall, I think that as I understand this, this is essentially no cost to the county government except for the growth in the base is what we're talking about, which is going to go away regardless whether this is approved or not.
Right.
So this doesn't change that equation. It's simply the same thing. It just depends on what the money is going to be used for. This is essentially City of Wichita, which passed this 7-0, them asking the county to agree to let them do this. They take the risk. They if they're going to bond this out, it's their bonds. It's not risk to the county. I don't know that there's any growth in terms of our cost of government once again. So I don't think our sheriff's department or our fire department or any of the other roughly 40 agencies that we have will have a tremendous impact by this decision. So again, I think we ought to be good partners with our friends across the street and support them wherever we can. So I'm inclined to support this. My only question would be, if this original TIF was for streets and lighting, to the extent that this might shift some of that revenue towards the renovation of the park, are they prepared to cover the cost of streets and lighting some other way? I mean, that might be a concern, but it's not not our concern necessarily, it's a concern to the city, but I guess I have that question. Have they addressed that at all?
I have not seen anything about that. I would say that this portion of the TIF district has exceeded the expectations in terms of value increase. So it doesn't appear to be an issue at this time.
All right. I do have one other concern, but I don't know that you can answer this question, but I did talk with someone who represents Interest Bank Arena, and they were concerned a little bit about whether or not this could get done between now and March 2018. Has anybody looked at the schedule of these renovations and making sure that that can actually happen?
What I know at this point is that the city is considering their request for quotes and so forth at this time, but as far as the timeline for completion, I don't know.
All right. Well, Mr. Chairman, I see we have three options today. That is either to vote for this, approve the amendment, or to not vote for this. Should I say vote to veto the amendment or to take no action? And based on those three things, I think my preference would be to be very clear with our support or our opposition to this proposal this morning. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that we would take action this morning by approving the amendment to the district plan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have further discussion. First, Commissioner Renzo.
Well, I'm just going to share, I have a couple concerns. I think this is a good project, but I do have the concern that Commissioner Howe brought up, that the original intent was for street improvements and parking facilities, where I think is a good plan, and then by diverting resources away from that, I'm not sure that's the best idea. And I guess I'd have to take issue with your assessment on item 2, whether or not the project is economically feasible without county support. I think it's clear that it is, and it could be funded in other ways. I think it's best to retain the current agreement and dedicate the revenue for street improvements and parking facilities as previously agreed to. I think that's appropriate use. So those are my concerns.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very happy to support this project. I think it'll be a great asset to Interest Bank Arena, which is a county project, but this is a great way for the city and the county to work together and improve quality of life downtown. I would also like to make a public plea with this, that the city help us with our EMS contracts, since we're always so more than willing to help them with projects like this. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well said. Any other comment? Since this is an issue of broad public concern, I'll ask if there's anyone from the public that wishes to speak or make a comment or voice an opinion, or if someone from the city representative would like to make a comment.
Here's a guy who can help us with the EMS contract.
Yes.
You know, I'm smart, and I'm going to stay out of that one. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you so much for hearing this issue. We're excited to really partner with you because we really want to have a great welcome mat to Interest Arena, and we really view this project as an opportunity to put the best face on the Wichita and Sedgwick County area. I know a lot of focuses on the 3 days of the NCAA tournament, but we know there's many other events that take place in and around Interest Arena. And one of the things we've heard from not only existing businesses, but as well as people who go to events at Interest is, where can we gather pre and post event? And I kind of call it linger longer. We always want to have people linger longer in a downtown that benefits both the county and to the city. We also have heard from our businesses around who have identified NASCAR Park as a challenge. Unfortunately, we have issues with the park that has a gathering places for people who have, I'll call it, challenges. And that we have no silver bullet to answer that, I'll call the homeless issue. But we do know this is one of the areas we can continue to work on that and improve that with our hot team, which is our homeless outreach team. But as we've met with businesses, it's starting to impact their ability to recruit businesses as well as residents to these new apartments in the downtown. So we knew we had to take a look at this. The benefit we have now is we have proposals for new development adjacent to the park
that would help clean up some of that area, but as well as generate an incremental tax increase that then we could funnel to help make these improvements in Astor Park. To the design that's out on the street today for RFQ, a request for qualification for design, the goal is more of an open, I'll call it an event space, that we'd hope to work with Intrust Arena and your team to how do we do pre and post events. I know as I watch NCAA tournaments and NFL events, it's always those events pre and post where they're doing videos of what's going on in and around our community, and we love to have an opportunity to showcase that to the world as we work to attract talent. I know we were just at the event at the Douglas celebrating the success of that in Cargill. To be able to respond to our business's needs, to be able to recruit for not only today but long term, we feel NASCAR is important. So we agree with you. It is a very aggressive schedule to try and get a park done by March. We're going to do our darndest, is that the right word? I'll call it that's the correct word in this setting, to make that happen. Sometimes people complain government doesn't move fast enough. This is one we're going to work as hard as we can to make sure, if we're not fully complete, but substantially complete, that we can put our best foot forward. So I appreciate the support, we appreciate the partnership, and we look forward to working with the county for long term. Thanks.
Well, thank you. For the record, just state your name and title.
Sorry, Scott Rigby, Assistant City Manager, City of Wichita.
Right, okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for Mr. Rigby? I see none, so thank you very much.
Thank
you. Any further questions or discussions from the bench? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. I think, Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzo?
No.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Chairman Unruh.
Aye. Okay, and Brent, thank you for that presentation. Next item, please.
Item H, adoption of the June 2017 Sedgwick County Solid Waste Management Plan Update.
Good morning, Commissioners. Susan Erlewine with Environmental Resources. The Kansas Department of Health and Environment requires counties to develop a solid waste management plan and to update that on an annual basis. Our anniversary for that is June of every year. The Solid Waste Management Committee has reviewed this plan update. They did not have a quorum at their meeting. There were one short, but all of the ones in attendance approved the plan update unanimously. So I'd like to review with you what the Kansas Department of Health and Environment requires and some of the projects we've accomplished. One of the things they require is listing who collects trash in our community. And another word for trash is municipal solid waste. They always try to make things sound prettier than what it is. There are 19 businesses licensed to haul MSW in our county. 14 of those provide weekly residential collection. The others are ones that do huge cleanups that you see ads for. So we have that list in the plan update. We also list how much waste is disposed of in our community. Over 402,000 tons were received at our 2 transfer stations in 2016. Now, the 2 transfer stations are both privately owned. One's located up north at 37th Street North, just west of West Street, and the other's down south at Hoover and 55th Street South, but compared to last year, we had a slight increase in the amount of trash thrown away, 2.5% increase. This graph shows a 5-year trend on how much material has been thrown away. You can see 2014 was a low year, and then it's gone back up. We're still less than we were back in 2012. The reason for the dip could have been economic reasons. Also, we had, as you'll see later, more recycling performed in 2014. The state requires us to look at the census numbers and how much we're throwing away per person per day. And this is what this graph shows. We're at 4.31 pounds per person per day thrown away in our community. That's right in line with what the state number is, which is 4.28. So we're about normal with the state number. They want us to look at how people manage grass clippings or yard waste. Of course, it's recommended that people mulch mow when they can, not have to pick up the material. That helps fertilize the ground as well. But we do have 2 composting facilities where people can take material. One is Evergreen, located up north at 53rd Street North, just west of Broadway. The other is down at Brooks Landfill, which is just north of K-96 at West Street. You can see 332 tons of material was taken to Brooks, and over 3,000 tons taken to Evergreen. Also, some small cities have their own compost area just for their residents. One example I can give is Hayesville. They have a compost area for their citizens. There were 4 facilities receiving recyclable material from our community, and they reported over 46,000 tons were received in 2016. Now, to look at that over a 5-year period, you can see, as I mentioned, trash was low in 2014. It was high in recycling in 2014, and we've kind of evened out. Unfortunately, last year, you may know that the large recycling bins at the Dillon stores were pulled. Those bins were provided by Waste Connections, who paid for them. Dillon's provided the locations, and due to so much material being left outside of the bins and trash being thrown inside them, which unfortunately, if there was trash mixed in, then the whole bin was considered trash and the material thrown away. Waste Connections, along with Dillon's, decided to pull those locations. Those bins are still located in the city of Hayesville, Park City, and Valley Center because they have not had those problems. So for now we have those 3, but there are other locations where people can take materials such as International Paper and Pro Kansas Miller. So people still have the ability to drop off or get curbside recycling. They need to contact the waste hauler for those options. County also provides a household hazardous waste facility. Last year, we received over 1,144,000 pounds of material from over 26,000 participants. So we have a lot of people going to our facility, dropping off household hazardous materials such as oils, cleaners, paints, gasoline. So that's very good. We also take pharmaceuticals, over-the-counter, and non-controlled substances. We cannot take the controlled, which is the painkillers that you would have to pay for, the morphines and codeines, except on National Drug Take-Back Day. We participate with that with DEA and the local sheriff's department. You need someone from the sheriff's department there in order to take controlled drugs. We also work with businesses, the smaller businesses that don't have a lot of hazardous waste. Our permit allows us to take waste material from them. We do charge the businesses at our cost, which is a lot less than they would pay if they called a company and had them come just to their facility. Because of our contract, we have lower rates than what they can get. So we work with businesses, and that helps them save money. So over 60,000 pounds from small businesses last year. And we have our swap and shop area where if material that's brought in is in good condition, we check it, make sure, for example, that paint's not moldy, that it can be used again, or cleaners, that the labels are readable. We put those out on the shelf, and people can come in and get those materials for free. It saves us money. Last year, we saved over $116,000 in disposal costs from people picking up this material. It saves them money because it's free to them, and it's worked out very well over the years. So we encourage people to go use the facility. You don't have to bring something in to pick something up. Also, we have 5 remote collection events every year. Last year, we received over 155,000 pounds from the 5 remotes. You can see the locations there, Textron Beechcraft, Hayesville, Goddard, Park City, and Oaklawn. And earlier today, I mentioned the next 2 we're having, the one down at K-MART at 47th and Broadway, and the one the following week at Derby North Middle School. But we've also had them in other areas, and this works very well. A lot of people come out. We always hope for good weather, and that's an actual picture of a remote event with all the material that was brought in. So we hope for good weather and that a lot of people attend these. This graph shows the amount of pounds of material coming into the household hazardous waste facility. You can see it's been increasing. Last year, slightly lower than the year before, but it's over £1 million that we've been receiving there. And our customer base, if you look at the blue line on top, the number of customers has been increasing coming to the facility. So we're trying to get the word out so people know about us and that they come and properly dispose of their household hazardous waste. We also have construction and demolition landfills in our community. There are 2 of them, Brooks Landfill and CDR North. They're both up at K96 and West Street area. This takes materials such as drywall, 2x4s, carpeting, shingles, concrete. Any material that's considered inert can go to these facilities, and it's a slight increase, less than 1%, from 2015 to 2016. Our county offers bulky waste coupons to help residents dispose of large items, sofas, chairs, anything that they can't fit in the trash can. We'd like them to use this coupon. We will be offering it again this year starting in August. And what this allows is the person to go online or call, sign up for a coupon. It's mailed to them. They'll have 3 months to use it, and they can get rid of 1,000 pounds for free at either the North Transfer Station or the South Transfer Station. Unfortunately, as you can see, we issued over 7,000 in 2016 because people say, oh, it's for free, I might need it, and they get one, then they don't use it. And 38% of the people did redeem their coupons last year. So that's good, and we like it if, order it if you need it, not just maybe. You know, if you think you're going to use it, and we give you plenty of time to use it, but just because it's free doesn't mean you should just get one and throw it away. We also work with Christmas trees. We have a recycling program where we have parks all around the city and county where people can bring their Christmas trees. The material's mulched, and they can come and get the mulch material for free. We have 22 sites. We had almost 5,000 trees converted to mulch last year, and that was a 23% increase from the previous year. So I think you see cycles of people using fake trees and then going back to real trees. And we have special cleanups that we've performed. This past year, I gave a talk to the townships at their annual meeting about having a cleanup in the township, like a city neighborhood cleanup. Salem Township took me up on it last year. We had 5 different locations around Salem Township where we put out 2 dumpsters for trash, 1 for appliances and 1 for tires. And it would be there from one weekend, the following week and the next weekend, so 9 days for people to bring material. And if the dumpster became full, we'd have it removed and brought back so more material could be sent into it. Over 203 tons of material was collected in Salem Township from this. 13 CFC appliances, that's with your Freon in it, so your air conditioners or refrigerators, and over 3,600 tires without rims and 200 tires with rims were dumped in that. And that would still be out in our community today, I'm sure, if we hadn't done this program. We also work with the Metropolitan Area Building and Construction Department and the Aging Department on helping specific residents clean up the area. When MABCD is citing people with fines that if they don't clean up, they'll have to pay money, the people may be willing but not have the money to get rid of the materials. So we'll actually deliver a dumpster to the home that they can fill up. The neighborhood looks better, it's cleaner, we get material out of the neighborhoods. Same with the Department of Aging. They may have elderly people or hoarding situations where we help clean those up. We had 105 of those in 2016, so far 111 of those in 2017. And we're actually limiting the number that we do per week because we want to save money for the next coupon program coming up in August. And there's an example of a dumpster that was dropped off at a house for one of these cleanups. We also help clean up illegal dump sites around the county. We've worked with Kansas Department of Health and Environment on this and with the townships. Here's an example of one in Sedgwick County. So you could have tires, cars, trash, and if there is trash, we try to work with the Sheriff's Department on identifying who may have dropped it off if there's any envelopes in there. Again, mattresses and tires and trash. And we provide free no dumping signs to townships for them to put out on the road, letting people know that there are fines up to $1,000 for doing this. And we like to keep it cleaned up. We don't like having tires out there that's going to collect water. Since we started doing this back in 2002, we've collected over 1,600,000 pounds of material from the townships cleaning up the roads. They take it to the transfer stations, and the solid waste fee pays for the disposal costs. So it's a nice partnership where they're providing the labor and we're providing the disposal. We also look at storm debris and try to know when there's large storm events. We'll let the citizens know that they can bring the material to the county west yard. And at that west yard, we have a tub grinder, which is also portable. We have taken it out to other cities to grind material and turn it into mulch for the citizens. And we also have an air curtain burner that's much cleaner than burning on the surface. On the left is a picture of an open burn. You can see the flames. There's a lot of smoke. On the right is the air curtain burner, much cleaner, and this is the way the state prefers it. So we try to work and be ready for if there's a widespread storm, we can help the citizens. And just this past April, we had a tire collection event, and it was held for 3 days. The first day we had it, it was for governments and townships, cities, schools, anyone who had tires in a large truck. We wanted to keep them separate from mom and pop with a trailer backing up for safety reasons. So we collected from them on a Thursday and Friday and Saturday from anybody coming in, the residents. The 3 days we did this, we collected over 101,000 tires, and that came for 1,300 vehicles. I like to say this is the 5th tire event we've had, and each year, except for the first 2, it's been getting lower. Actually, the first year we had it was like 212,000 tires. The next one was just above that, 220-something thousand tires, and it's been going down since then. So I think this shows that we are getting the tires out of the community, the fact that it keeps getting lower each time we do this. We don't like the tires out there, the mosquito breeding habitat. There could be a road hazard if they're left in the road. So we try to work again with townships to get them out and have events like this. State also requires that we look at permit and grant applications in the county. There were none for last year. And we also do public education on our website, on pamphlets, on ads in the papers, trying to get the message out. And the solid waste fee is reported here, and what it was last year was the same as the previous year. And you'll be looking at this item right after me on the fee. But I would like to say one of the things I've been looking at, electronic waste. In 2009, we had a one-day electronic waste event up at the Pavilion 2 at the Coliseum. In one day, we received over 1 million pounds of electronic waste. I'll never do that again. It was, the line went from 85th Street down 135 to 53rd Street. And who knows how many people didn't stay in line and bring us material. What I'd like to, and since we had that event, different companies have come forward saying they'll take certain electronics, but right now the hardest thing for people to get rid of are television sets and computer components, especially monitors. Some places charge $20 or $25 to get rid of those. At one point they were free, they're not free disposal anymore. So I would do a specific event like TVs only and have an event for that, not one day, but put over a week or so. Same with computer components. So I'm looking at that as a possibility for next year and working out the details for that. Has to be inside a building to get it out of the weather for the company that would get the low bid to take that material. They don't want it rained on. So that's one of the things on the horizon that we're looking at. And I will remind people that there's like 20 states They have bans on throwing away electronic material. Kansas is not one of them. People can throw the material in the trash, but a lot of people want to do the right thing. They know there are some hazardous chemicals in those components, and they don't throw them away. They want to see them recycled. I think another part of that is you spent so much money on a TV or a computer, the idea of just throwing it in the trash bothers people. So we'd like to provide them a good opportunity to get rid of this material in a safe way. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
All right, thank you, Susan. A lot of information. Commissioners, are there any comment or questions about the solid waste plan? Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you. Well, Susan, I'm glad you mentioned the e-waste, because if you hadn't mentioned it, I'd been asking you a question about it. I do think it's important that we hold an event again, just from, it's been a long time since you held it last time, and you saw that the response was overwhelming.
It's very.
I think once we get a lot of these old CRT type monitors out of service, it'll probably, the demand will go down because everything's going to LEDs, LCDs, and so forth. But in the meantime, I think sooner rather than later, we need to have another event to get rid of some of that e-waste. And with that, I appreciate the feedback, and I recommend that we approve the update and submit it to KDHE.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll second the motion, and we have more comment. Commissioner Ranzau.
Yeah, thanks, Susan, for the briefing and everything you do. Outside of the, putting the stuff in there that changes on a yearly basis, have we made any changes to this plan as far as our expectations or anything like that?
No, we haven't.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Hell?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of quick questions. On the swap and shop,
yes,
so the items that you give, the items that are there available for the public, is it for purchase, or how does that work?
The items are there. We have limited it to 10 items per person per month, but it's free. And the reason we limited it is some people started coming in and wiping out entire sections for carpentry, the lacquers and thinners. And so to be fair, so everyone who is paying the solid waste fee has an opportunity to take advantage of this, we decided to limit 10 per person per month, and that's been working very well. We also mix paint there. You have white, tan, and gray paint available, 5 gallons of latex paint for $25.
Okay. When we're not collecting I'm looking at the DEA National Prescription Drug Take Back Day. If someone has some prescription drugs, especially these, pain management type drugs, how do they get rid of them if they don't? If this event doesn't happen in their community, how does someone get rid of that type of?
Some pharmacies have started taking them back. I'd suggest they'd call their pharmacy and see if they're one of those. Otherwise, the suggestions are to mix the drugs in kitty litter or old coffee grounds and bag them. That way, who wants to take a drug once it's been in that? So that's the reasoning, and that's what they recommend. We do not recommend flushing them down the toilet, because that becomes another issue with water quality.
But if they do mix them with the kitty litter or whatever, then they can put them in the trash?
Yes, sir.
Do solid waste disposal that way? Okay. I was going to ask about the flushing, because I think that's what we see on TV a lot. People flush their whatever, contraband or whatever it's going to be. And I just think that creates another problem for the water treatment facilities they've got, or the sewage treatment facilities. They've got to manage that as well.
And most wastewater disposal facilities cannot treat for the drugs. They've actually done some tests and found, just across the border in Colorado, male fish carrying eggs from all the female hormones from the drugs that have gone into the water.
I would like to say I agree with my colleague that the e-waste is something that I think we ought to try to do, and I appreciate the report on that. But as overwhelming as that was, it just tells you that there's probably a pretty good need for that. And I would just like to reflect upon, we did a Oaklawn cleanup a little more than a year ago, and the things we saw huge amounts of were sofas and couches, mattresses, and a lot of e-waste, lots and lots of TVs. And those are the things I think that people have trouble knowing what to do with those. And one more quick comment. Out of the 101,193 tires we collected this year, that was only out of 1,307 vehicles. If you had to divide that out, it's about 77 tires per vehicle. To me, that just shocks me a little bit. In other words, there may be some I guess people who are just collecting these for some reason. I don't know why they would have 77 tires, but
Yeah, I've talked to some landowners who purchased land and they didn't realize how many tires were scattered about in the brush on the land until they started cleaning them up, and they would have tires in the back of the truck and trailer load full. More than one time they'd have to come in to get rid of them. So that's just one example.
Well, that is, I guess that's just a little jaw-dropping to me. I'm a little surprised at that number, and it makes me wonder, and this is just more of a comment, I suppose, but when we do these types of cleanups, as much as I think it's the right thing to do to get this material out of our community, it in some sense, if we don't do it, the stuff ends up on county roads or in ditches and stored in people's property that causes all kinds of problems with critters and mosquitoes and who knows what all. So I think it's great to get the stuff out of the community. And some of the areas, like in Oaklawn, they might store the stuff on a city-sized property in the backyard and not have the money to get rid of that. So that to me is a great thing for us to do. But on the other hand, I hope we're not encouraging someone to wait for the next event. Because I know when I buy tires, they usually say it's a couple bucks or whatever it is to dispose of these tires, and I have to pay that fee. And I suppose there's some people who might say they don't want to pay that fee, and they'll just simply store that till the next event. That's
correct. We do not allow businesses who receive money for tires to bring them to the event. But if someone's going to store it up for years, one thing Kansas Department of Health and Environment has a limitation on how many tires someone can have on their property. A business, for example, is limited. I think human nature, you may always have people who will take advantage of whatever program we offer.
Very good. I don't think I have any other questions. I think you have a motion in a second. Is that correct?
We do.
I'm very supportive of the motion this morning, and thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to echo Susan. I think it's really critical that we do another e-waste event. I talked to people, and even with the event coming up this Saturday, people asked me if we would take old electronics. So I think that should be a priority for you to help get a community-wide event sometime this year, and maybe not just do it in one morning. Maybe you stretch it out over a period of time, just so people can get rid of those old TVs and electronics. So thank you.
I'll plan on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any other comment? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Ransell?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Chairman Unruh?
Aye. Next item.
Item I, adoption of the resolution establishing solid waste fees for 2018.
Good morning, Commissioners. Lori Ann Showalter, Area Budget Director. What's being presented to you today for the 2018 solid waste fees is not what was included in the original agenda item and backup material as published. However, we have heard that there is a concern about stormwater and how to handle it in conversations with commissioners. So staff's recommendation today is, in the short term, to increase this fee for 2018 to allow for additional cleanup of stormwater debris. In the long term, we will still be looking for a way to address this issue with a long-term funding source. The resolution that's proposed for 2018 suggests a range of fees that are $1 more per tier than the fees that were established for 2017. The residential fee is $5.88. Tier 1 is $4.44 per parcel. Tier 2 is $5.58 per parcel. Tier 3 is $6.73 per parcel. Tier 4 is $7.87 per parcel. And Tier 5, which is large multi-use properties such as the malls, is $5.58 times the number of business units within that parcel. For 2018, there's also language included in the resolution that will allow government-owned land that is otherwise exempt from property tax for government use to be exempted from the solid waste fee. This $1 increase would add additional $226,000 in revenue for 2018, which would be built into the operating budget to allow that money to be used for additional solid storm debris cleanup or additional events in addition to what Susan described to you moments ago. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. And if you don't have any questions, then I recommend that you adopt the resolution that's before you.
Well, thank you, Lauren. The prices that you iterated there, they are the proposed prices that you're asking us to approve. It's not last year's prices, that's the new prices.
That's correct. It's $1 more per tier than was adopted last year.
All right. We have a comment from Commissioner Ranzau.
Yeah. So this proposed increase, what exactly is it going to be used for?
It would be available to be used for additional storm debris cleanup events or additional special events in addition to the ones that Susan has planned for 2018.
We don't have anything specific?
No, not at this time.
Okay. So why are we, if we don't know what we're going to use it on, I mean, I'm a little confused. Originally, I was briefed that we were going to keep it the same level.
Yes, that was, excuse me.
Commissioner Ranzau, could I assist?
Yes, please.
Lorian, you did a great job, by the way.
Thank you.
This would be for storm debris removal only. We've talked to the legal department about it, like when you have a storm, ice storm, or a heavy rainstorm, flooding, to get only the tree limbs, the debris out of the creeks. We could not use this money for like reshaping a bank or putting in riprap or other drainage items that might normally be used. It is only for solid waste, which would be the tree limb debris removal, and that's it.
For stream maintenance?
Yes.
To expand that?
Well, yes.
Now, do you do that? I know I asked you this year-round. We have a new way of doing it, so we're not limited by weather.
Well, we have 4 people. We're in the middle of budget talks now. We are looking at maybe adding some more equipment next year. That's another thing. We have 31 projects on a to-do list that we're to go to. And yes, they're busy year-round. Even in fact, the winter is one of the better times to work. So they are busy year-round.
Okay. Well, I guess I just have some issues. A few years ago, you know, we decreased this at staff's recommendation because they said we had adequate resources and we had some reserves. Now at the last second, we're wanting to increase this for a use that, I hear what you're saying, it seems kind of interesting that we're using this fee for that, but we do need to do stream maintenance, but at the same time, we need to make, I think we have revenue sources available already. I mean, that's called our general fund, and I'm concerned, we got a list of what that crew is being used for. They're being used for things other than stream maintenance, like putting in bridges and doing some other projects, a variety of things. I think the first thing we want to do is, if we think it's important and a priority, that we make sure they're doing stream maintenance all year round. And at this late date, without a good plan, and this seems to be a bee rush, I'm not going to vote to increase this tax, basically. So I think there are alternative ways to do it. I do think it's important that we do it. I'm not convinced we're doing it in the most efficient way possible. I think we need to also look at outsourcing some of that, contracting, to see what we could do, at least finding out if we could get some other people to do it before we consider increasing this.
I understand what you're saying exactly. I just want to clarify a little better. It would be used mainly like when there's an emergency type situation of an ice storm or flooding that our stream maintenance could not possibly keep up with, and be over a large area, that this would help. That's the purpose.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
And I also know what the intent is. I know what's going on.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. We have a comment from Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From what I understand, this fee could be used for things like having an e-waste event, correct? To add more events throughout the year.
That is correct.
In the community, first off. Second, we used to have a reserve account that was depleted after was it after the 2012 tornado in Hayesville? Because I know Hayesville was the last area down in my district that received substantial amount of funding for disaster relief.
Yes, in 2013, the city of Hayesville qualified under the reimbursement policy we had at that time, and they received $73,000 from that storm debris contingency.
So having this added fee would be available to the smaller communities if there were another ice storm, tornado, some type of event, act of God, that would be, this would be available for the communities in Sedgwick County, correct?
At this time, we don't have that policy anymore. It was rescinded, and the storm debris contingency was done away with in the 2016 budget. So that would be something that would need to be discussed further.
Okay, but the money, if we do change the policy, we could put this money towards that. Is that correct?
You could if you voted on that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was here when we voted to lower the fees, and I'd just like to know if you can, I think I may have this data that you presented to me when you briefed me before today, but I didn't bring it with me. So can you please remind me, just talk about the residential. What was the fee before we lowered that? Can you remind me, please?
Yes, the fee was lowered in 2016. In 2015, it was $6.48 for residential.
Okay. And the other tiers, did they also go down by an equivalent amount?
They did, yes.
Okay. Back when we voted on that, I did not know that there would be potentially other uses for this money. I am very concerned about the flooding that has been continuing to happen down in the south part of the county. I think the whole county really has a problem, but I'm sensitive to what's going on in the Derby-Mulvane area. And just one case in point, there is trees that are down from the ice storm we had. What was the year that we had such a significant ice storm?
I believe it was 2008.
2008. So there is still a huge amount of tree debris that had fallen down in 2008 during that ice storm. So much so that just in one community, the Deer Lake Estates, which is right to the east of Oaklawn, if I understand correctly, if we put our entire stream maintenance crew on that one project alone, it would take them an entire year to just take care of that one area where the tree branches have fallen. So this is a pretty significant area. If I look at the storm mitigations that have been identified for the Spring Creek watershed, we're looking at roughly $250 million worth of things that need to be done, which I consider to be infrastructure. And the biggest problem with getting those things done, of course, is revenue. Now, all this isn't going to fall into this camp, but removing storm debris that happened during that ice storm is something we could do with this money. So I've identified this as a potential way to get some additional work done. And I know when the budget was presented to us in a hearing, we talked about changing our stream maintenance crew from 4 back to 6. Back in 2009, I believe it was, we lowered our crew from 6 to 4 for budget constraints. And for some reason, I think we felt like we didn't have maybe we're caught up, or I don't know what, but asking our folks today, they say that the list is as long as your arm. And so we're not keeping up with it. We have deferred maintenance that needs to get done. We can, in my opinion, contract this out, potentially get caught up if we had some revenue to do that with. And I guess I would like to do something substantial. This is not a huge amount of money, but it is enough money that the people, I think, that have been impacted would like to see something done. And so I would say, by the way, if you add in the other mitigations around the county that we're aware of, we're approaching about $500 million worth of things that need to be done in terms of stormwater management. So this is going to cost an average resident 9 cents a month to do this fee increase, but it does provide a chance for us to get ahead on some of this stuff. Right now, we're not keeping up with it. So with all that I've just said, I'm supportive of the resolution this morning, and I appreciate the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ranzau.
Yeah, just to clarify, I'm supportive of the e-waste event, free maintenance. I think we can do it with the current resources we have. I'm particularly concerned, just to clarify, that particular program that Commissioner O'Donnell talked about that we canceled, I think people need to remember, but that program was in existence, I think, for, 10 years. It was meant to fill a gap. It was never used except one time, and that was in the city of Hayesville. And in that particular instance, I called it a fraudulent claim because we essentially paid them for expenses they didn't incur. So that's why that particular program was shut down. And if we're going to raise fees to bring that back, I don't think that was a good, I don't think that would have been appropriate. I think eliminating that particular program was meant to free up that money to use for other stuff that's more beneficial, like stream maintenance and all this other stuff. So that I'd be concerned if that's the intent also as we move forward. So that's just some of the history and why I would not be supportive of that particular use them for that particular program.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dennis?
Thank you. We set this each year, right?
That's correct.
And so next year, if we find that we've got too much in the balance, we can always reduce it again next year, correct?
You could, yes.
And it amounts to the average residence about 8.5% a month, the raise?
Yes, the raise, yes. About 49 cents total.
Total. Okay. And we can use it for this e-waste that we've already discussed several times, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Well, I know down south they're having problem with stream maintenance. Out west, of course, I've got 450 square miles in my district, and Cowskin and Calfskin are two of the major areas that cause flooding out in west part of Sedgwick County, and I'm concerned about it. When they came and briefed me on it initially, and they did come and brief us with leaving it the same, and I was one of the ones that said, hey, can we use this for some of these tasks that I just talked about? And that, I think, is probably why that it changed from the initial briefing, as some of the questions that I and maybe some of the other commissioners had. So I am supportive of raising it this year. We can always adjust it next year. We want to obviously watch to make sure that we're using it for the right thing, but I believe this is something that with an increase of 8.5 cents a month that the citizens can afford, and that will pay big dividends in the long run. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Lorian, I don't remember if you said how much this will generate.
It's about $226,000 additional revenue.
All right, and that can be used then for a variety of things, not to support the program in general, but specifically the e-waste event that's been discussed and the stream maintenance that we all agree is a prevalent need across the entire county. So I think it's reasonable, a reasonable amount of money to support that solid waste plan, and so I'm going to be supportive of this issue. But I don't know if there, I don't see any commissioner asking to speak. Is there someone from the community that would like to make a comment on this? Okay, I don't see anyone rising to speak. Madam Clerk, I'm not sure we have a motion yet.
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, that being the case, what is the will of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we establish the solid waste fee as briefed.
Second.
All right, thank you. We're going to take the recommended action, or at least that's the motion. Is there any discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, call a vote.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranza?
No.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Chairman Unruh.
Aye. Lorian, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item.
Item J, consideration of a 2017 Community Policing Development Program grant in the amount of $51,000 for training class development and related training supplies.
Good morning, Commissioners. Jeff Easter with the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to speak about this today. CISM stands for Critical Incident Stress Management Training, or Critical Incident Stress Management. What this means is that several years ago, law enforcement across the nation, and including public safety services, EMS, fire, those type of things, recognize that when public safety officials go out to different type of scenes, murder scenes, car accidents, traumatic injury scenes, child death scenes, it causes stress to be induced within those public safety officials. We also found, at least in law enforcement, a lot of these factors were contributing to an uptick in suicides amongst law enforcement officers, alcohol issues, divorce issues, those type of things. So CISM was developed, and basically what it is that it's a group of peers along with a psychiatrist. We use Impact here locally, a very good partner with us to sit down with the individuals that are affected by the event, give them the opportunity to talk through it, voice their feelings on it, We then give them the opportunities for other type of treatment options, other type of coping mechanisms to help deal with this particular issue. Years ago, that was not done, basically. In those particular professions, it was seen as a weakness. If you struggled with those type of issues, it was seen that you were weak and maybe shouldn't be in this profession. What we have found over the years, that's not true whatsoever. We're all human. We all experience feelings. There are certain things that will affect you. For me, it was child death stuff because I had kids. Some of the other stuff never really affected me, but child death stuff did. And so everybody has a trigger point. And what we had found was that through CISM, folks opened up. And should have opened up, and they have stronger family ties because they didn't want to expose their family to what they were seeing. They have a lot less stress that causes some of the divorce issues, the alcoholism issues, and unfortunately the suicide issues. So we have a group of about 15 individuals within the Sedgwick County Sheriff's Office that includes our civilian personnel, detention deputy, and our commissioned personnel. We've been trained extensively on these issues. We activate the team anytime that we've had a serious event, whether it's an officer-involved shooting, a horrific accident. Sometimes we've had some really horrific suicides that involve children. So anything that rises to that level, or if the employee themselves says, hey, I'm really struggling with this, I'd like to have some CISM team members come talk to me. So it's really grown. The Sheriff's Office here in Sedgwick County has been one of the leaders within the state of really developing this program and pushing it forward. So much so that we get inundated by other entities within Sedgwick County and in the surrounding areas because some of the other counties don't have as large of offices or police departments. They don't have this mechanism in place. They know we do, so we'll come up and assist them in their horrific type of events that take place in their particular counties. One such event that was the first time that I'm aware that we have been utilized, as you may know, here a couple weeks ago, we had a individual that works inside of our clinic. Very good person, very well liked by the clinic staff, which is a subcontractor of ours, that was murdered. We were asked to bring in the CISM team to talk to the other staff. There was 24 people in attendance. It was a 2-hour meeting, which is rather long. But it was very much appreciated by our clinic staff, and it's assisted us in helping move them forward and still doing the job they got to do every day. So what this grant is, it's a COPS grant that will provide $51,000 in additional funding to be able to put on CISM training, to train some more members of the Sheriff's Office. But for the most part, the reason we're asking for it is we want to be the hub to help train other departments, other public officials or public safety officials in this particular program. The COPS grant, I normally do not apply for anything through COPS because there's always strings attached. There's always matching funds. There's always something that they want the county or the sheriff's office to put forward to get this grant. There is nothing that is required of us or of you to match any grant or any type of monies that the grant provides. This is the first COPS grant that we've applied for in about 7 years because of those issues. And so what we're hoping to do is that we will receive this grant. We'll partner with the Kansas Law Enforcement Training Center, which provides training throughout the state of Kansas. If you go west of Sedgwick County here, there's a lot of smaller agencies, smaller sheriff's offices that first off don't have the personnel nor the funding to send folks to CISM training to train the trainer programs. So what we're hoping is that we can bring in the trainers, which cost money. We can bring in the materials, which cost money, to get a lot of these other agencies trained on CISM. It will also cut down the amount of time that we're spending away from our normal duties to provide this type of expertise. And so by partnering with KLATC, we can provide those classes statewide through KLATC. We've talked to KLATC about it. They are enthusiastic about helping with this because this is a item that is really not discussed too much and is not trained at the state level. And so at this point, we felt, we want to be a leader, not only here in Sedgwick County, we want to be a leader in law enforcement in the state of Kansas. We're the biggest sheriff's office in the state of Kansas. We felt this was an item that would assist all of law enforcement and fire, if they so choose to be in it, and EMS in helping our employees cope with difficult issues that they can see almost on a daily basis. And it's about our mental health of public law enforcement, fire, and EMS officials so that they provide the best service to the citizens that they serve every day. So with that, with no strings attached to this particular grant, I'm asking today that you give your permission for us to move forward on the grant.
Thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate the presentation, very clear, but Commissioners, are there any comments or questions?
Move we take the recommended action.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Commissioner O'Donnell?
I just wanted to thank the Sheriff for taking time out today to come and address this. I know how passionate you are about these particular issues, and it really shows just your time sitting in the audience through other county business to wait to speak to us. It just shows your dedication. So we really appreciate everything you do, Sheriff Easter, to make our community safer and better.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Is there any other comment or discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranza?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Chairman Unruh?
Aye. Sheriff, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. I appreciate your support.
Next item, please.
Item K, consideration of an amendment for existing grant from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment in the amount of $920,295 to provide outreach, prevention, and intervention services through the Healthy Baby Program in the Division of Health and the Healthy Family American Program at the Kansas Children's Service League.
Good morning, Commissioners and Board of Health. Adrienne Byrne, Division of Health. I also have with me this morning Nichelle Williams, who is the Healthy Babies Program Manager, and Candace Johnson, who is the Children and Family Health Director. So this morning I'm asking for your consideration of a grant award in the amount of $920,295 from the Kansas Department of Health and Environment to provide services to at-risk women, children, and families through the Division of Health's Healthy Babies Program and the Healthy Families America Program at the Kansas Children's Service League. We have received this funding for 15 years, and this agreement pays for a portion or mostly all of 10 positions. Also, rent and other supplies that we use monthly. Healthy Babies is an educational program for prenatal and parenting families. Education and family support is provided through home and in-office visits. Services are available to all Sedgwick County residents regardless of income or insurance coverage. Program outcomes focus on decreasing number of preterm and low birth weight babies to Healthy Babies participants, as well as increasing safe sleep practices, which is putting the baby on his or her back in the crib without the bumpers and the stuffed animals and the blankets, just having the baby in there in a sleep sack. This year, in 2016, we did provide services to 901 women, 638 babies, and 5 males, and those 5 males were the primary sole caretaker of the babies and enrolled after the baby was born. In 2016, we did enroll 126 more women in the program than we did in 2015. There are dollar-for-dollar matching funds required, but we do this through in-kind, non-monetary contributions of staff time and services. United Way does provide $170,000 of private funds to Kansas Children's Service League for their portion. I recommend that you accept the award, authorize chairman to sign the grant amendment, and authorize the purchasing director to provide written notice to Kansas Children's Service League of the county's intent to renew this grant for 1 year. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Adrian. We have a question or comment from Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, and I should have looked this up before I came to the bench this morning, but I didn't find time to do that. But I believe it's in our county strategic plan, something related to infant mortality of Sedgwick County. Do you know what that is, or could you
It is reducing low birth weight babies.
Okay, so
in Sedgwick County.
It's not specifically for infant mortality, but just about the birth weight. Okay.
Yes.
I have made comments on this in the past, and I'll probably make a similar comment. I will make a motion before I make any other comment. I'll make a motion that we accept the award and authorize the chairman to sign the grant award amendment and sign the agreement with Kansas Children's Service League and establish the budget authority as provided in the financial considerations section of this request. I have some other comments, but I'll make that after a second, if it's okay, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Commissioner, you want to
Yes. So first of all, I want to be clear that I'm very supportive of the mission of healthy babies, and I think that this is a tremendous thing for us to be sensitive to and try to find ways to solve. I have said this in the past, and I'll say this again today, and I think that unfortunately the data is not available for 2016, and certainly not for 2017 because we're in the middle of that year, but in 2016 the data is not available, and I think we had 9 SIDS deaths, I think, in the first part of 2016, if I remember right.
We had 9 sleep-related deaths, yes.
Sleep-related deaths, and that was for babies between the ages of 0 and 1.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't know what's happened since then, but that was a tragic data point for us to have that happen in our community. And if I understand correctly, not to get too technical here, but I think that at least I think one of those was in the program, and one of those was from educated parents that have bachelor's degrees, and where these happened, unfortunately, is not available for us to analyze because they don't want us to have that data. So I don't know anything more about that than what I've just shared. But I would say the program, if you look at 638 babies over in this program this year, this last year, that's from 0 to age 2. That means on an average you have about 320 babies that are in this range of 0 to 1. And that is the age that we keep data on infant mortality, because once they hit age 1, they're no longer classified as an infant in terms of that particular data collection. So 320 babies in this program, and I think, again, I don't know this for a fact. If someone has better data, please let me know that. But my calculations are, I believe there's around 32,000 births in Sedgwick County per year. So that means roughly 1% of the babies that are born in Sedgwick County are actually having some type of impact from Healthy Babies program. And for those in the program, I will agree with you. I think we are making a difference, and I think that the program is beneficial to those in the program. But there's 99% of the babies and the moms are not having any interface with this program at all. And to the extent that we have roughly 60 or so infant mortality deaths in Sedgwick County per year, we're not going to move that needle. And that's tragic to me. I think that the reason that is partially is because the people who designed this program also decide the methods and all of that we must follow to access these dollars. And so I appreciate the efforts that's done. I appreciate the mission, but I don't believe we're going to move the needle in Sedgwick County with this program. And that, to me, that's unfortunate. If we had the freedom to use this money differently, we would probably, in my opinion, be more effective in reducing the data on infant mortality in Sedgwick County. But because of constraints of the program itself, we're not able to do the things that, in my opinion, would help us become more effective. So, again, I make the motion this morning. I'm very supportive of this. I wish there was a way we could become more effective at reducing infant mortality. And I'll just say this again. I think that Kansas has a higher rate than the rest of the nation, and Sedgwick County has historically had a higher rate in the state of Kansas. And so we are an outlier, and we do need to pay attention to this. This is not good for us to have these high numbers. And I really wish there was a way for us to make an impact on these numbers. So I continue to think about that, and I want to challenge ourselves to be aware of those points I just made, and I'm supportive of the program, but I do hope there's a way that we as a Board of Health can find ways to impact these numbers in accordance with our mission statement and based on the things I've already mentioned this morning. So that's my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Adrian, thank you. You had big successes last year, just the number-wise. Can you reiterate that so everyone understands that you did take concerns that the majority last year really charged you in your office with getting more women involved in this program?
Absolutely.
And you did that.
Absolutely. We increased our moms by 126 between 2015 and 2016.
And what was that base number?
The base number in 15, we had 775 moms, and in 16, we had 901. And we're still pushing to add to our caseloads and reach even more moms.
Mm-hmm. So Commissioner Howe was mentioning some of his concerns that he didn't think you were making a big enough dent. That was something that was, like I said, strongly charging your office with making an improvement. You did that. I would like to add to, my support to that increase of number, but also ask you guys to continue to find these innovative ways to get more moms involved in this program, because there obviously is great, community need for healthy babies in the Wichita and Sedgwick County area. And I know it's not easy, but I know that your office has the ability to do it. So that's why I'll be supportive of this grant, because I know that you guys are going to continue to move that needle up, and hopefully next year you'll crack 4 digits, hopefully get over 1,000 moms involved in that program. So thank you, Adrian.
Thank you, Commissioner. Is there any other comment? Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I would like to just be clear. I do appreciate the increase in the number of women. And just quick calculations, that's about a 16.2% increase in women within the program over the previous year.
That's correct.
Again, relevant to Sedgwick County, I don't want to calculate that number, but I know it's a very small number. So my point is, I think that we have an opportunity countywide to do more. I don't know how we'll ever get there, but I do appreciate the increase, the 16% increase within the program over the previous year. That is tremendous. I want to be very clear that I'm appreciative, and I think that is a good movement. I appreciate that very much. But I do think there's plenty of work to do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any other comments? I think we have a motion and a second. So, Madam Clerk, please call the vote.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzau?
Aye.
Commissioner Howe?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Chairman Unruh?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. Next item, please.
Item L, consideration of a grant in the amount of $80,000 for community paramedicine services between Sedgwick County EMS and VA CHRISTI Hospitals, Wichita.
Mr. Hadley, before you begin, I think we have a comment from Commissioner Ranzau.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just got this agreement today, this morning. In fact, I've not had time to adequately review that. I'd like to postpone this to our next meeting if at all possible. So I have adequate time to review the agreement.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner. I don't know if there's any time-sensitive issue on this.
There is a time-sensitive issue. This grant is from Ascension Health, the parent company of VA CHRISTI, and it is only good till June 30th. The funding is available to June 30th of this year. So knowing there's no further commission meetings this month, that's problematic, and we would risk losing this opportunity.
All right, thank you. Well, we considered this last year.
Correct.
So commissioners that were here at that time have some familiarity with it from then, and then we've all been briefed on the specifics. Although Commissioner Ranzau is correct, we haven't seen a copy of the contract document.
The Scott Hadley EMS. What has substantially changed is the funding went from $160,000 to $80,000, so it was cut in half, and some time parameters of how the program will work are the only substantive changes within the document. So from last year, that is really the only change besides the dates and the chairman. So there's really not been any other changes if we decrease the funding in half.
Okay. Well, then let us decide here whether or not, Commissioner Ranzau, was that a motion?
Well, it was just a suggestion. There was some discussion last year, but I don't recall ever getting to a contract phase. But regardless, this morning is the first time I've seen this contract, and so we're going to be asked to approve it today. That just puts me in a very difficult position. Okay. I have a general knowledge of what's going on, and certainly I can ask questions. But that being said, whatever the will of the board is, but that's my concern.
All right, thank you. Comment from Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Scott, you and your team came and met with every commissioner individually or in pairs on this issue, correct?
That's correct.
And I did get the email this morning, briefly read over it. There's no changes whatsoever from what our conversation was and the information you provided to us.
That is correct.
Okay. And could we get legal just to verify that? I don't know if Mr. Yost or
I think Misha Jacob Warren is here, who worked with the contract.
Misha Jacob Warren assisted with the contract.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Misha Jacob Warren, Assistant County Counselor. Scott is correct. There are no changes from what you had been briefed on. I'm happy to walk you through each and every provision, legal provision of this contract, if you'd like. After Scott explains to you kind of the substantive provisions of that, I'm happy to do whatever I can to help. I do apologize for the late distribution of this agreement. We didn't reach a final agreement with Ascension and Via Christi until yesterday afternoon. So I will own that. That is on me.
No, Misha, I believe you have full confidence of the Board of Commissioners in your ability, and we have great faith in you and your work. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. I don't see any. Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you. Well, I understand Commissioner Ranzau's concern. It came to me by email. I just checked a minute ago by 5:05 last night, and unfortunately I had an event at 6 and an event this morning, so I honestly have not read the agreement, so I think probably it would be beneficial if we got a little bit of detail on the agreement. I have been briefed on the agreement. I would imagine there are some folks in the audience who would like to speak on the agreement today. So I wouldn't want to delay it for that reason. I also wouldn't want to see us delay it past the end of June and miss the opportunity. So I think I'd like to hear it, but I'd like more details because I hate to vote on it. Even though I've been briefed, I've never read the contract.
Sure.
Okay? And so I would like to get a little bit of briefing on it.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, I think as I see the consensus, the will of the board is that we'd like to see a presentation, and Misha's here for contractual questions. So if you would make a presentation,
sure,
we'll go forward.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioners. Good morning. Scott Hadley, EMS, Acting Assistant County Manager, Public Safety Code Enforcement. Before I use an opportunity, in this opportunity, we were approached, as you know, a year ago to partner with Via Christi Transitions Clinic to address high recidivistic patients who utilize EMS and are readmitted to the hospital on a frequent basis. At that particular time, since that time, over the past year, we have visited a couple of patients. I know Dr. Gallagher and Malachi Winters, Colonel Winters is here from the Office of the Medical Director today, provided you a presentation on a couple of patients where we sent a community paramedic out working with Via Christi Transition Clinic staff and substantially reduced the number of times they were calling 911 and being readmitted to the hospital. We saw a very positive trend. This opportunity is for a year. Via Christi is fully funding a position for Sedgwick County EMS in the amount of $80,000, so we can focus and dedicate that person full time to work with Via Christi and partner with them and augment what they are providing to the community. We know there's a gap, but at a time, some of these patients who are have very medical complexity in their disease processes are going home, and then they're getting sicker and utilizing 911 and first responders. We go out and transport, and they're readmitted to the hospital. And we believe there's an opportunity for us to break that cycle, to intervene with a community paramedic who has a skill set to go out and make a home visit and augment what Via Christi does to reduce the number of times their reliance on 911 and being readmitted. And I think the silver lining in all of this, despite whether it may benefit the hospital more or EMS a little bit. It benefits the patient. We have healthier folks at home who are not sick being readmitted to the hospital. In this contract, and Misha can walk you through the specifics, but the county is under no obligation to continue this contract after the first year. No financial obligation whatsoever to continue the program. And I know there's been some concerns addressed that the government or EMS would be expected to continue this program, and that's not the sense in the case that I get from Via Christi in visiting with them. So we're under no obligation. It specifically spells that out in the contract. We can terminate the contract. Either party can terminate this contract with 30 days written notice and walk away and reimburse Via Christi for the amount of money that we haven't spent. So there's an opportunity there if it doesn't look like it's been advantageous and working for us. We believe it will be advantageous. We know there's other ways to administer this program, that this program's modeled off other communities that we've looked at with success they've had in their programs. And this is a pilot program to gather further information and then to come back and say, is it beneficial to patients? Is it beneficial to hospital? Is it beneficial to EMS? And so this year program will give us that time to gather that data to bring back and say, yes, this is a good program, we need to continue, or we don't need to continue, or Via Christi needs to do it on their own. But they've been very good partners to us. And I know Robin Chadwick and Charity Clark, I don't believe they're here today. They weren't able to attend, but those folks have put a lot of work into this and are very passionate about it and have been very good partners. As you know, Via Christi has been very good partners to EMS. They provided us a station to operate out of over 20 years at their St. Francis campus. They still continue to provide us a place at the St. Joseph campus and the Old Riverside Hospital campus, which is now Via Christi owned. So they've been very gracious partners to us. We'd like to continue this, and we think it'd be advantageous to our service and our community to enter into this agreement. And I recommend that you approve the agreement as it is before you today.
All right, thank you, Scott. We have begun this program sort of on our own, so we have some indication of its potential success.
Correct, and Colonel Leonard is here. If you need some specifics, he can certainly provide them to you. He gathered some data and presented that at the staff meeting a few weeks ago to you.
And the benefits of this, I mean, we can, of the contract, is we use those financial resources to help reimburse us for our costs.
That is correct.
And then the further benefit of the program is that it saves money for our EMS system, and that it potentially reduces calls, and also saves money for Via Christi, in that it offloads some of their emergency room activity.
And readmission rates, that's correct.
Correct, all right. All right, thank you, and Commissioner Renzo has a comment.
Well, I'll have several questions. So we're going to get $80,000 for 1 year.
Correct.
For this position. And then where's the funding source for years after that?
There is no funding source for years after that. And it says that in Section 4 in the last paragraph of the contract.
So why would we do something for 1 year without a funding source subsequent to that?
To gather data to see if this is truly beneficial like we think it would. We want to run a pilot. We can't answer some of those questions today. We need to gather the data, and this is an opportunity to do that.
Okay. Now, previously when I briefed last year, and I think you confirmed this again this year, this is specifically to target congestive heart failure patients that are being released from Via Christi, is that correct?
That is the bulk of what we'll do. They will do other work, but the bulk of the target of the program is for those patients with congestive heart failure that are frequently readmitted to the hospital.
Okay, so we're going to, in fact, we have Appendix B here. I'm trying to read through this CHF program it talks about.
Right.
So, well, I was briefed on that the intent last year. Okay, first of all, the primary benefactor of this will be the hospitals because they will avoid readmissions. We will benefit also. That's absolutely true. But it's been described to me as intensive case management for congestive heart failure patients being released by Via Christi. Now, they already have a transition clinic where they kind of help patients as they move out. Okay, and
correct.
I would argue that's good. I guess my biggest contention at this point, beyond the fact that I haven't been able to read the contract in its entirety, is that they're already doing this function. And I would support it working together, but I don't really understand why the employee in this particular program, and I think you've confirmed that it doesn't have to be, but it could be an employee of Via Christi, and we
Sure.
can still partner with them and do the same thing.
It could.
And that is what I would recommend. I'm not so sure we want to expand county government into intensive case management of congestive heart failure patients for Via Christi when they have the resources available. They're already doing something similar. I think that's the most appropriate way to do it. And I thought I saw some of the initial assessments, some of the things that we're doing here. I'm seeing under intervention. I mean, they don't require EMS. They can be done by a nurse. I know they're doing it in other areas. So that's my concern. That's my concern, is that we're going to have mission creep on something that really should be done by the hospitals. But I do want to partner with them to work on it. I think that I don't like how the model is being constructed here, I guess is what I
Sure.
say. Particularly with Via Christi, they've got plenty of money, okay? Ascension does. I'm sure you're aware of that. And they could fund this. And this deadline, I don't know. I don't know why all of a sudden they couldn't fund it after July 30th or June 30th. I'm not sure that's accurate. But nevertheless, I just have some concerns that we're going to create an expectation that we may or may not be able to meet. And I think the model could be done better and still have a great partnership. And so those are some of my concerns based
Sure.
on what I've read so far. I mean, really, I just have a hard time. I think the ultimate goal of Via Christi and maybe some other hospitals would be for us to take over this. That's my concern, to be honest. And I can see why they would want it to be our employee to begin with and fund it initially and then create that expectation. I think we can get where we need to go without doing it this way. And I'm disappointed that we haven't asked them to reconsider to do that. Like I say, it talks about, they're going to have the program. It's initiated by the hospital. We're going to use electronic medical records. It's going to go into their electronic medical record system. it just seems a lot simpler, too, to have their own employees do that and then coordinate and facilitate with us. Those are my concerns, and I'll continue through here if I have other questions.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you. So, Scott, based on our conversations, if Via Christi or Ascension next year comes and says we don't have this money anymore,
Correct.
Your intention isn't to have the county commission find the money to fulfill that
No, sir.
position. You would then just move that individual into your normal operations just through normal attrition.
Correct.
You'll have a spot for this
Typically,
individual
yes.
we're hiring.
Yep.
So whoever gets this job will know this is a 1-year trial run.
Correct.
And they're not necessarily guaranteed a second year in this particular area, but you could move them into other EMS functions.
That is correct.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner O'Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I meant Howell.
That's fine. I got it. I mumble too.
Okay.
Just want to make understand, I guess, the rest of this. This salary and benefits together. What does that cost to the county for this individual?
It's.
I understand $80,000 is going to cover our cost, but what is the cost for their salary and benefits?
It's in the packet. I'm sorry, I don't have that sheet in front of me for the full-time paramedic salaries, wages, benefits, retirement.
Okay.
It's less than $80,000.
Right. Okay.
It's $60-some thousand, I believe.
Okay. And then there's also a vehicle that we're going to need to provide as well. Correct?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. And that we already have the vehicle, but there's
Yes.
going to be some wear and tear. And
Sure.
if this program continues, eventually we'll have to replace that. So, and this money could be used for vehicle
Yeah,
maintenance
there's
or vehicle
contractual
replacement or whatever.
line item in there for contractual charges for fleet maintenance and vehicle.
And those benefits do include their retirement, like KFRS
Yes.
funds and all that stuff? Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's all my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, my opinion or my persuasion on this is that we have the cooperation of a very good partner in Ascension and their ministry partners here in our community. We have kind of started this program on our own, and it's proven in our estimation pretty successful. This allows us to recoup some of our costs. I think that the folks at Ascension Via Christi are probably willing to invest in those programs that save them money, and we're eager to partner up when it saves us money. So I'm optimistic about the future of this and about the future of the partnership. I don't know how to respond to any of the medical questions my colleague Commissioner Ranzau asks. He knows answers to questions that I don't know how to ask in terms of medicine. But in terms of admissions and saving money and what seems to be a good program for the individuals that are involved, it seems like this has already demonstrated its value. So I will be supportive of this request. So. I think now would be a good time if commissioners have specific questions about the contract. Now would be a good time perhaps to verbalize those. And don't want to rush anybody, but I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to ask a question. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just curious, what were the items that were discussed yesterday that caused us to be agreed to such a late hour? What were the items in the contract that were of disagreement, perhaps?
Misha Jacob Warren, Assistant County Counselor. Good morning again. There weren't any contentious items in this contract. It was just a little bit of back and forth, people in the office, out of the office, away from email. There was no contentious item. It was just kind of delayed back and forth on the part of staff.
I'll just say I received this at 6:04 p.m. and it's 17 pages long. I did read the first 6 pages where the substance of the resolution are there, but then the print gets kind of small and it gets kind of legal. So I didn't read the last 10 pages where I don't really understand your language. It's a different language that you use. And so, but that did look like it's very generic and very standard language. And I've read some of your other contracts. It seemed like it was very typical.
So it is. So I can start from the back for you. In fact, the Appendix A are the Sedgwick County mandatory terms and conditions. We put this on every single contract that the county has, whether it's a vendor-initiated contract, whether it's a Sedgwick County-initiated contract. These are your boilerplate things. Venue, jurisdiction, disclaimer of liability, taxes, all of that kind of thing. You have seen this multiple times before. There's absolutely nothing new about that. What kind of takes up a little bit of the bulk, I will skip Appendix B because that's kind of the substantive part of this contract, is the Appendix C, which is the HIPAA Business Associate Agreement. So because this would be sharing protected health information back and forth, we always include a business associate addendum. Again, this is standard boilerplate for the county. You have seen this language multiple times before. This language is set forth and governed by statutes that we are required to have. So you've seen this before, and this is just our version thereof because there will be that exchange of protected health information. So that takes up pages 12 through 17. So both of those things you have seen before. I'm happy to walk through the details of the agreement itself if that would be helpful, or if not, I won't take up your time.
I just want to say, again, I reviewed those last 10 pages. I didn't see anything that stuck out to me as being anything other than just standard boilerplate type language. And I think I would agree. We've seen this type of language before, so I don't have any concerns about those 10 pages. It is very technical and legal language, but the first 6 pages, and there's a signature page on page 7, I did read through that very carefully, and I don't have any questions on that. So I want to say I've had time to read through the contract to my satisfaction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Dennis.
Thank you. I just pulled up your email a few minutes ago and tried to start scanning through it to see what you explained to us just now. I guess between you and Mr. Yost, it's $80,000.
Correct.
It's 1 year.
Correct.
Could be renewable, but the only reason that would be renewable is if Via Christi continues to fund it. The Sedgwick County has no funding obligation beyond year 1. Correct?
That's correct, and we specifically put that in the contract.
We've got all of the security requirements for patients covered in this agreement.
Yes.
We have liability requirements, I noticed, listed in this agreement. Do you or Mr. Yost see any reason that legally that this would cause any concern to Sedgwick County or this board or the citizens of Sedgwick County?
From my legal opinion, no, but I will of course defer to my boss as well.
I don't think there's any liability potential for Sedgwick County.
Again, I don't usually vote on something that I just scanned. I do trust both Mr. Jacob Warren and Mr. Yost, and I did scan this, so I would probably, I've been briefed on it several times, so it's not new information by any means. It's just the contract is something that I haven't spent any detailed time making sure. But I do trust you all. That's why we have hired you as our counselor to advise us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, I do not think we have a motion yet, so I will move that we take the recommended action concerning this grant of $80,000.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? Commissioner Howell.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say I appreciate the comments of my colleague, Commissioner Ranzau, and I have some of the same concerns, but I based on your testimony this morning, Director Hadley, knowing that it is our intent that this will not continue should the funding not be there in any following years. I have no doubt that I'll remember this conversation, and so should that happen, I don't think there's going to be much of a good argument for us to continue this when the greatest benefit is to via CHRISTI. But I do see we have some benefit to Sedgwick County EMS, and that is what's compelling me to vote in support for the resolution this morning. But I do appreciate the comments of my colleague. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. I see no one else asking to speak, so we will call for the vote, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzau?
No.
Commissioner Howe?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Chairman Unruh?
Aye. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Commissioners.
I think if it pleases the board, I think I would like to take a 5-minute break, and we would recess till 11:15, and we'll be back promptly at that time to commence the meeting.
Good choice.
if we could do that. It's always a risk when you take a break that it's hard to get back to rhythm. So, but at this point, I will call back to order the regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, and I believe, Madam Clerk, we're ready for the next item.
Yes, sir. Item M, resolution adjusting the convenience fee charged for payment made with credit card and debit cards.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Rick Durham, your Deputy Chief Financial Officer, and this morning you have a resolution before you that is to establish a user fee or a convenience fee for credit and debit card payments. So I have some slides to go through, and what I would like to do is begin with some definitions of the program as a whole, so there's a level of understanding and everyone knows what terms I'm using as I move forward. So the first one is a merchant service fee. And when we talk about a merchant service fee, that's a fee that's charged to a merchant. In this case, Sedgwick County is the merchant, for accepting debit or credit cards as a means of payment. And that rate is established by the bank, and the current resolution was at 2%, and the bank increased that fee to 4% effective November 16th. Now that increase is by contract, and the contract that we currently use is we're piggybacking off the state of Kansas contract, and the language in that contract says that they can increase that fee in February and November of every year if they so choose. And November of 16 was the first time that we have seen an increase in that fee.
Excuse me, Rick, we do have a comment from Commissioner Renzo.
Is there a limit to the amount that they can increase it?
You know, I don't.
Each of those times?
I do not know if there is a limit per contract, but I will find that out and I will get that back. Yep. So the next one I want to define is a convenience fee, and this is a fee added for the convenience of using a card for payment. Okay. Now that rate is established by the county. So the merchant service fee is a charge to the county from the card company. The convenience fee is revenue that we collect from a constituent or for someone using a card for payment. Credit card transactions. So just not necessarily a definition, but let's talk about the transactions themselves. Every time someone uses a credit card, whether it's at the county or whether it's at a retailer downtown, merchant service fee is charged as a percentage of the total transaction amount. That percentage that's charged can vary widely based on the type of card that's used, whether it's a Visa card, whether it's a MasterCard, whether it's an American Express card, which we don't accept here at the county, by the way. And then if the card presented is a rewards card, that is if you get airline miles on that, points, cash rewards that go to your alma mater, any of those things, all of those things factor into the percentage that is charged to the merchant in the form of a merchant service fee. So we also have debit card transactions, and I'm going to explain two types of debit card transactions that can take place. The first is a signature debit. And the merchant service fee charged to the county for a signature debit is the same as a credit card transaction. So as you see here, there's an example. So if it's 4% and someone is paying $1,000 in that 4%, then that charge on that would be $40. Okay, that's a signature debit. The second type of debit card transaction is a PIN debit. And what that is when you put your card, you slide your card, or you insert it if you have chip-enabled technology at a retailer, and you put in your 4-digit PIN. The fee charged for that, a merchant service fee that we are charged as a county from Bank of America, is a 20-cent fee. So that's the difference. I want to really stress the difference between a PIN debit and a signature debit. And the reason I want to stress that, because if you use your debit card to pay for anything online via the internet, it doesn't ask you for a PIN number. It asks you for your card number, the expiration date, and a 3-digit code on the back. So that would be processed as a signature debit transaction, and we would be charged the merchant service fee, the percentage of that total amount. Okay? Now, I have a note at the bottom of this slide that I want to draw to your attention, is that all payment card transactions accepted by Sedgwick County currently are processed as credit transactions. And what I mean by that is we don't have the machines enabled to accept PIN debit. That's the current situation we're in. So let me give some background about where we've come through this for the credit card fees. So in 2001, Sedgwick County began accepting credit card or debit cards to be used for property tax payments. From 2001 to 2012, the county paid the merchant service fees as a cost of doing business. In 2012, Sedgwick County began charging a convenience fee of 2% on payments made with credit card and $3.95 on payments made with a debit card. Now remember, we were charging $3.95, but we weren't being charged ourselves that way because we didn't have the PIN-enabled debit. In 2013, the tag offices transitioned to the state payment system. And as a result of that transition, the number of payment card transactions that the county accepted and got a merchant service fee reduced by more than 400%, and those merchant service fees that were charged to us reduced by $660,000. And those differences are from the year 12 to 2013. So that's a 1-year change. Again, the current resolution that was approved in 2012 collects a convenience fee on property tax payments made with a payment card, credit or debit, and that's a 2% fee on credit card transactions and a $3.95 charge on debit card transactions. The impact of that current resolution, the way it's written right now, in 2016, the county had $241,000 in merchant service fees. We collected as revenue $188,447 in convenience fees, so you can see there's a deficit there of $52,600. Through April of 2017, we've been charged merchant service fees of $165,700 through the first 4 months of the year. We've collected convenience fees of $27,800. So we already have a deficit of $137,000 through 4 months of a year. What's different? Why is the deficit increasing? Hopefully I anticipated a question. Well, the data shown here is through in 2016 is through April of 2016 compared to through April of 2017. So you can see the number of transactions have increased 5,300 transactions, or a 70% increase in the number of transactions. The total dollar amount, or sales is what we call it, that we've received went from $2.5 to $4.1 million, and that's a $1.6 million increase, or 64% increase, 63.8. On the bottom part of that chart, you see what that is, where that impact is. And it's I'll call it the MABCD impact. The number of transactions through the first 4 months of 16 were 0 because we weren't the managing partner for MABCD until October. Through the first 4 months, we see 4,400 transactions, nearly 4,500 transactions from MABCD alone, and that dollar amount is $1.626 million, which really accounts for the total difference in the first 4 months. So I'm going to address the MABCD as I go through for the proposed resolution. So today, the resolution that you have before you is to increase the convenience fee for property tax payments from 2 to 4% because of the bank change, the bank fee change, to eliminate the $3.95 convenience fee for debit card transactions. So additionally, is not part of the resolution, but it's important. we're going to take MABCD and we're going to remove them from that formula, and we're going to let MABCD merchant fees will be charged to their fund center. We're going to enable the PIN debit feature on all terminals throughout the county. Now, the exception obviously will be online payments. Okay? And we'll charge no convenience fee on PIN debit transactions. Questions?
We have a couple. Commissioner Ransville.
Well, Rick, I don't have any question. I want to say thanks to you and Tom for all the work you put into this. I know it can be kind of confusing to people listening. I guess the bad part is we're having to increase the percentage from 2 to 4, but that's because that's what the bank's doing.
Yes, sir.
The good part is we're going to allow debit credit, which would decrease the cost to the consumer as well, and maybe increase convenience in some of them. Now, just to clarify though, if someone wants to do it online and avoid a fee, well, how can they pay their property taxes online without a fee? Can't they do it through like a direct, I don't know what you call it, but
It's called a direct debit or an ACH transaction, which is it's a bank draft that will pull directly from their bank that there's no charge for.
So, and I know I get questions about this occasionally. So if you want to pay your taxes and avoid a fee, you can send in a check. You can do it online through this direct transfer. You can do it here at the county and use a PIN debit.
That's correct.
All those ways that they have to pay their property taxes and avoid any sort of extra fee.
That's correct.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just I'd like to echo the compliments from my colleague. I greatly appreciate the extra work that's gone into this. We did consider an earlier resolution that had some different terms in it. There was some discussion about raising the fees for PIN debit. Actually, let me verify. There wasn't PIN debit discussion. There was only discussion about debit, which was signature debit, or credit card, and regardless, it was going to be an increase to 4%. And so what we've challenged you with, and I think others in the county, is to enable PIN debit. And we've discovered that an actual PIN debit is only a 20-cent transaction rather than a $3.95 transaction. They used to run a debit card as a signature debit. We were getting charged 4% and only charging the customer $3.95. And there lies where the extra cost to the other taxpayers came from. So this is much better, I think. Passing on the credit card fees is reasonable, but enabling PIN debit, so there's virtually a zero cost to us or the consumer or the taxpayer, to me is the smartest way to do this, and I appreciate that is what we're looking at today. On slide 11, I'm going to be using your own words here. Slide 11. Let me change the way these bullets are worded here. You say increase the convenience fee for property tax payments from 2 to 4%. Let me change that a little bit. What we really intended to do is increasing the merchant service fees for tax payments from 2 to 4% for credit card and signature debit card transactions. Let me say it again. Increase the merchant service fees for tax payments from 2% to 4% for credit card and signature debit transactions. Is that correct?
No, let me correct you.
Okay.
We are increasing the convenience fee. That's the fee that we charge. The merchant service fee is what we are charged from the bank.
All right. So the word convenience fee is what we charge the customer. So we're going to increase the convenience fee for property tax payments from 2% to 4% for credit card and signature debit transactions.
That's correct.
Okay. And then we're going to eliminate the $3.95 convenience fee for PIN debit card transactions.
That's correct.
Eliminate that. Okay. So that's actually a fee reduction. It used to be nearly $4, and now it's basically zero.
It is zero, right?
It's 20 cents. It's 20 cents to the county, but it's zero to the consumer. So we're actually, essentially, in a sense, encouraging potentially, if they understand that, they might feel encouraged to use PIN debit. And on the other side of this, if they use a credit card or signature debit, it's about a 2-day window before that money is drafted from that bank and comes to the county. But as a PIN debit, we get credit to those dollars instantly. that correct?
Essentially, yes, that's the way the banking system works, yes.
So for me personally, I have not written I probably maybe write like one check a year, maybe not even that. I use my debit card for, in place of a check. And so to me, I'm totally happy using my debit card that way. And the county gets credited immediately. If someone does write a check, we still accept checks. That doesn't cost them money. But we do have an issue of trying to collect on bad checks, and that's a whole other topic. And so someone wants to pay their tax bill, they could use a credit card and pay 4%. They could use PIN debit and pay nothing, or they could write a check and pay nothing. They can go online and pay nothing if they use ACH or direct debit transaction there. They could also use a credit card online if they wanted to, but they would still be charged at 4%. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay. To me, this is exciting because we're lowering the fees for probably the majority of people who are going to be making these payments. For someone who doesn't have the money and they want to make payments on their credit card, that's an option. If somebody wants to get miles or rebates or whatever, they can pay the 4% and certainly get that as well. But that's not going to be paid for by other taxpayers. And so to me, this is a great combination and a great balance of methods of payment by the consumers. And we do provide probably the one that's most popular would be the PIN debit transaction, in my opinion, would be the most used, or the ACH online, which in either case is no cost to the consumer. And to me, that's a fantastic new way to do business. And so I appreciate you bringing that to us. And I'm very supportive. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we would adopt this resolution.
Second. Thank you. We have a motion and a second now. Now is an opportunity for further discussion. Just one quick clarification. If a constituent wanted to use a PIN debit, they need to come here to the courthouse in person where they have that PIN pad machine.
That's correct.
All right. And then, I'll have another question. Commissioner O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to publicly thank Commissioner Howell for working on the debit side of this proposal. We definitely would still have that $3.95 service fee had it not been for his persistence in trying to nail down the actual cost of it. And I think there's just a whole lot of confusion in the debit card world when people use their debit card. Unless they type in their number, it gets ran as credit, and having the little Visa symbol is what makes those debit cards double as credit transactions. So it's been a learning experience for me as well. So Commissioner Howell deserves a lot of credit for that, because that's going to save a lot of people money and extremely limited costs to the county at the end of the year, at 20 cents each. So thank you for Rick, for you and your office as well.
Thank you, Commissioner. There hasn't been too much talk. We've talked about property tax payments and charges at MABCD and the new schedule of costs. But what about someone coming down here or paying for their tag renewal or their automotive taxes?
Well, tag renewal is not a county cost. That's run through the state payment system. So any fee that would be imposed there is to the state of Kansas.
Okay. Well, I just wanted you to say that because I've had a constituent say, well, how am I going to be paying this on all my automotive fees when I renew taxes? So that system is not under our authority or control.
That is correct.
All right. Thank you. Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just that caused me to remember another discussion I had, and I want to make sure I clarify this. We can't increase someone's taxes to cover this fee, so we have to really charge the fee in order to not absorb that by other taxpayers, other revenue sources that we might have. So I think in the case of the tax payment, charging the taxpayer that fee, in my opinion, makes a lot of sense. But in other areas of the county, there are the other pay stations around the county that we might use credit cards or debit cards or whatever. We are talking about potentially allowing those agencies or organizations to adjust their costs to cover these fees through their normal fee schedules that they charge for whatever services they provide. And so we're not charging the 4% on credit cards and signature debit cards at other pay stations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then what makes the tax payments different is because we can't really adjust our tax collection we can't absorb that. There's just no way to do that. Okay. To me, it's a point to note. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I don't see anyone else asking to speak. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, call the vote.
Commissioner Dennis?
Aye.
Commissioner Ranzau?
Aye.
Commissioner Howell?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Aye.
Chairman Unruh.
Aye. And next item, please.
Item N, presentation of the 2016 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report.
Good morning, Commissioners. Rick Durham once again. The Department of Finance has delivered to you the county's CAFR, or Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. This is a very thick book of financials, and it provides a complete and accurate disclosure of the results of the county's financial activity for 2016 fiscal year, and that fiscal year ended December 31st. Sedgwick County is required by state law, as well as by various bond covenants, to produce annual financial statements within 6 months of the end of the fiscal year. We are required as well to have those financial statements audited by an independent CPA firm. That action has been taken by the firm of BKD. The financial audit is complete, and BKD has issued the county an unmodified opinion. Stated otherwise, that's a clean opinion, which is the highest grade, if you will, that we can achieve in that regard. The financial report, and more importantly, the day-to-day financial accounting activity that was required in order to produce the CAFR, is done by the accounting staff. I would like to take this opportunity to recognize the individuals who were primarily responsible for putting the CAFR together, and they're in the room. Brandy Bailey, Mandy Estes, Marty Hughes, Amy Hayes. And I'm not leaving you out. That's our new accounting director, Hope, and she actually has just been on board for 3 weeks now. So the county and any government accounts for its financial activity in different ways. We're required to primarily answer questions about near-term financing capabilities. And what's that mean? Well, in the private sector, the primary interest of an entity is to know whether or not they made a profit. That's a long-term view of finances. But in the public sector, we're not here to make a profit. We're here to deliver services that can't be delivered by private entities to our community. And in order to provide those services, we have the ability to fund those services. So what we're interested in when we look at our financials is near-term financing capability of the government, and for that we use a basis of accounting that's called modified accrual, and that produces traditional fund statements. Now what that means is, instead of consolidating all of our accounts and records together of the different divisions like a corporation would do to produce their financial, we maintain a separate set of books for the various separate dedicated funding streams, so that we have various separate specific activities that we need to keep segregated. Those fund statements produce information that I'm going to share with you, and we also produce information used what is termed full accrual basis of accounting, which is the way a business reports their financial information. And for the statements that are done in that fashion, we provide what are called entity-wide statements. So again, the primary goal of the private sector is profit motive, where ours is to provide service. So I'm going to talk about each of these different methods, and I'm going to begin with the traditional fund statements, and we begin with the fund balance. And as I run through these slides, you'll notice at the top of that slide, or these slides, it'll say, for example, on this one it says pages A18 and 19. That reference is to the page number in the CAFR, where you can find the chart, the actual data that is made this chart. So this chart shows 5 years of history so you can get a sense of where changes have occurred over the last 5 years and what kind of changes have transpired. It shows a different color representing the different fund or fund type for all of the county's governmental activities. The green at the bottom is the county's general fund, which is far and away the largest single area of our financial system and where most government activities take place. The general fund ended 2016 with a fund balance of $63 million. That's $2 million less than the year previously, but as you can see, looking back across that time period, our fund balance consistently is between $63 and $68 million, so it's a relatively flat general fund balance. The blue segment immediately above the green is federal and state assistance funds, or grant funds. The 5-year trend represented here shows a relatively constant fund balance across time. The gray segment above that represents all other funds than the ones that I'm going to enumerate for you here. It's the fund balance of the Highway Fund, EMS Fund, ComCare Tax Fund, and so on. So you see the funds for all those other funds was $46.2 million. Directly above that, there's a thin blue line that represents debt service funds, and that fund balance was $3.3 million. The yellow segment immediately above that represents debt proceed funds. These are the funds that account for bond proceeds from the sale of debt, and the proceeds haven't yet been used either to pay for the project or to refund the debt for which the bonds were sold. The fund balance for that set of accounts is $36.8 million. And finally, at the top of the chart, you see the Public Building Commission, or the PBC fund, which had an ending fund balance of $9.7 million. And that's primarily money that was collected by PBC to pay for a building on the Innovation Campus at Wichita State. Now we look at just the general fund. So you see this chart identifies each of those 5 years of the general fund balances, and it identifies the classification of fund balance within each year. The red at the bottom represents non-spendable fund balance. Non-spendable fund balance are net assets that are attributable to inventories and other things that can't readily be spent. The gray bar represents assigned fund balance. Every year when the budget is adopted, we anticipate and budget for a large amount of contingencies in case there's a major storm or any other kind of event or a crisis. So provide legal spending authority that we don't ever expect to spend. We don't expect the storm to hit or have the crisis, but we don't want to raise property taxes every year to fund those type of contingencies. So we fund them with fund balance, and when we do that, we're assigning that fund balance. We're designating a use for it in the subsequent year. So you can see the designated fund balance, or the assigned fund balance, was $12.3 million. And the green segment at the top of this chart is the unassigned fund balance, and that's the amount of general fund balance for which there's no designated use. So the sum of the unassigned fund balance, $41.8 million, and the $12.3 million at the end of 2016 equals, in accounting terms, is the unrestricted fund balance. And our fund balance policy that says unrestricted general fund balance should never be less than 20% of budgeted expenditures and transfers in the general fund. And what you see represented on this chart is a demonstration of our compliance with that policy. We end the year with $54 million of unrestricted fund balance, budgeted expenditures of $204, and the 20% threshold of $40.8 million. Our unrestricted fund balance at the end of the year stood at 26.4% and exceeded the minimum threshold by $13.2 million. So I'm going to move, and I'm going to spend a little time talking about indicators of financial condition. One of the key questions that we want to be able to answer has to do with the budgetary solvency of our governmental funds, and that's budgetary solvency. So the first question is are the county's annual revenues sufficient to pay for the budget? So what you see on this chart shows 10 years of history, It identifies a percentage that revenues made of expenditures. What we want to see ideally is those data points to be right at or slightly above 100% line. In 2016, our governmental fund revenues amounted to about 89% of government fund expenditures. And in fact, we've been below 100% threshold every year since 2009. Now that measures government expenditure activity, which includes some capital projects, debt-funded projects, and the activity of the PBC. To get a more reasonable picture of whether or not we're able to pay for our own operations, we use this indicator, which takes the same revenue base and compares it to governmental fund expenditures, excluding PBC, excluding debt service and debt proceeds. So here we have an operating solvency measure as opposed to the budgetary solvency measure you saw on the previous slide. So what this, again, you want to see this line at or above 100%. And in 2016, we end the year with revenues at 100.6% of expenditures. So we're above the line for the first time since 2009. Another question we want to answer has to do with the flexibility of our finances. To what extent do we have full control over the use of our resources? And in order to answer that question, we look at the total debt service. That's the total principal and interest obligations the county has incurred as a percentage of all expenditures. So the extent that we have those expenditures, they're going to consume available resources we have at the end of the year. At the end of the year 2016, our debt service expenditures amounted to 6.1% of all governmental fund expenditures. And you see on this chart, we've consistently been around the 6% line, except in years 11 through 14, and we were engaging in a series of refunding, so we were paying off bonds prematurely. And that's why you see that spike. The final question we want to ask is whether or not the county has any difficulty paying its short-term obligations. And for this, we use a liquidity measure. We're looking at total cash and investments that the county has on hand at the end of the year as a percentage of liabilities that the county had at the end of the year. And what this shows at the end of 2016, our cash on hand amounted to $8.60 for every $1 of liability. That's a pretty good liquidity situation. You see, our liquidity was much better at the beginning of the 10-year period when we were in the process of building the arena. So that's why you see it start up there at 2007 and 2008 when we had the special taxes in 2005, collected them through 2007. So we were sitting on that cash. Then we began spending it to build the interest bank arena, and that's where you see the drawdown. So that would explain that chart. So the final measure, how much are we relying on other governments to fund our activity? What is total intergovernmental revenue as a percentage of total revenue? And what we've seen over the past 10 years is that intergovernmental revenue has consistently been between 14 and 16%. And that's of all revenue within governmental funds. There appears to be a spike in 2015, the small one, and that was that we received a $5 million grant that, for one particular road project. I would call that an anomaly, but it shows that we are not heavily reliant on intergovernmental revenue to pay for our operation. It shows further the extent of our reliance has been relatively constant over the past 10 years. Now, in my opening remarks, I talked about the entity-wide statements. That's where we roll all of the different funds of the county up into a single set of financial statements, that entity-wide financial statements. So as we move forward, those, again, like I said, they wrap it up into a single set of statements on a full accrual basis of accounting, what private business would do. So I look, and we begin with the county's net position in effect, the county's net worth. The county had a net position at the end of 2016 of $504.9 million. And that's identified by the bars on the left side of this chart. Each bar represents a separate year, so you can see that in 2016, that $504 million was a little less than, or a good bit less than where we were in 12, 13, and 14, when our net position was 85.2, or, well, I guess our net position was $623 million. I'm going to explain the 85.2 in a minute. So the 85.2 that I reference is our unrestricted net position. And in 25 and 2016, our unrestricted net position is now at $29.6 million. That's a swing of about $115 million. And what that is caused by is a new accounting rule that took place in 2015 that requires the county to reflect on our financial statement our share of the unfunded liability of the state's pension system, or CAPRs. So in the case of Sedgwick County, that unfunded liability represents about $122 million. And so it's reflected on our financial statements for the first time, as you see in 2015 and then again in 2016. So within each bar, you can see the composition of our net position. The green segment identifies capital assets, net of any debt that's outstanding. It was used to pay for those assets, and it has slowly risen over the 5-year period to a total of $477.4 million. The blue segment represents restricted net position, and you see the nature of those restrictions in the pie chart out to the right. Restricted net position is restricted primarily because of some dedication of funding streams. So you see we have funds that are restricted for capital improvements, debt service, grant funds, federal and state assistance funds, and so forth. So finally, that light blue segment that again I identified represents an unrestricted net position, and that's again where that change that I just talked about in the accounting rule that we have to account for the CAPR's unfunded liability. So the questions we want to ask here going forward is, did our financial condition improve in 2016, or did it deteriorate in 2016? And what this chart shows is that our position actually deteriorated by about 0.4%. Our beginning position was $507 million on the bar on the far left. Our ending position was $504.92 million, the bar on the far right. In between that, you see the revenues, $317.27 taken in by the county, and the expenses, $319.4 million. So that 0.4%, you have to say that our position did not improve during 2016, but I would say 0.4% is relatively flat. One of the things that we're concerned with is the extent to which the activities of the county are able to support themselves with their own self-generated revenue. Now again, we're not in the profit-making business, so we don't expect them to be fully self-supporting, but to the extent they can generate their own revenue, it means that we don't have to provide tax support. So what this chart represents is the various activities of the government represented by their bar, and within that bar is the total amount of expense that was incurred for the year. The green is the amount of program or self-generated revenue that an activity produced to pay its bills, and the blue is the amount of general revenue or tax support that was necessary. So what this chart shows is far and away the largest single activity of Sedgwick County in terms of expense is public safety. During 2016, we spent over $140 million on public safety activities. Public safety was able to produce about $40 million of program revenue. through municipal jail fees and various grants to cover those bills. But the balance, the $100 million, was required to be provided by taxes levied on Sedgwick County residents. So 74% of public safety activities are funded by taxes. And you can see that for each of the functions of government, the extent to which they were self-supporting. Health and welfare, which is the second largest activity of Sedgwick County, in 2016, those activities, ComCare, Health Department, CDDO, Aging Services, cumulatively incurred about $53 million of expenses. And of that $53 million, $41 million was paid for with program income generated by those activities. So the amount of tax support necessary to deliver human service activities or health and welfare activities was about $12 million, or 22.5% of the total amount spent on those activities. Again, there are different measures that can be looked at to determine the adequacy of financial position, and these are for the entity-wide statements. Again, that's all of the funds of the county rolled up into a single financial statement. So my focus here is on a solvency measure, what looks at the county's ability to pay off its long-term debt with its assets. So what we're doing here is taking long-term liabilities as a percentage of assets, and what we see in 2016, we ended the year of long-term liabilities equal to about 35% of assets. In other words, 35 cents of every liability was covered by $1 of assets. So we're in a condition to pay our long-term debts. So there's a spike that you see there in the last 2 years. The 2014 increase from what traditionally had been about 20% threshold, the increase to about 25%, was attributable to some debt refinancing that we were undertaking. The spike in 2015 up to above the 35% threshold is that CAPR's liability that I talked about, that new accounting rule that requires us to put that on our financial statement. But even with that, it still shows that we have ample ability to repay our debts. In your CAFR, there's a section called statistical section, and it's full of a lot of good information for anybody who might be interested in evaluating the Sedgwick County finances. I'm going to spend a little time showing some of the indicators and trends that you can identify by looking at that statistical section. First, we'll look at a 10-year history of government revenues and expenses. And on this chart, the green represents revenue, blue expenses. You can see, and you'd want to see that obviously you want your revenue higher than your expenses. And you can see to the extent which revenues and expenses have grown over the 10-year. And it shows that since 2010, neither have grown very much. We end the year with $316.7 million in revenue and $314 million of expense. We also can look in that chart, we can determine where the county's been placing its emphasis over the past 10 years. So we can look at the change of expenses over that 10-year period by function. And what this chart shows is the amount of expenses, the amount of increase in expenses in 2016 versus 2007. So the greatest source of increase for county expenses over that 10-year period has been in public safety. And that increase is $22.04 million. So what it says is that we're placing a lot of emphasis on public safety, and that's where we're targeting resources. Public Works expenditures increased $13.2 million over that 10-year range. You can see culture and recreation expenses increased $2.2 million over the 10-year period. And general government activities actually increased a very small amount over that.
Production and broadcast costs for Sedgwick County Commission meetings have been underwritten by Sedgwick County. KPTS welcomes comments from the public on its broadcast of the County Commission hearings. Viewers are invited to write to County Commission Broadcast, KPTS 320 West 21st Street, Wichita, Kansas 67203.